The Warrant of Trade stands as perhaps the most extraordinary document in the Imperium of Man, a parchment bearing seals and signatures that grant powers rivaling those of planetary governors and sector lords. These ancient charters represent direct authorization from the highest echelons of imperial authority, carrying the weight of the Emperor's own will or that of the High Lords of Terra. Unlike the countless bureaucratic documents that flow through the Administratum's vast machinery, each Warrant of Trade is a singular creation, handcrafted by the finest scribes and blessed by the most senior members of the ecclesiarchy before being sealed with wax bearing the aquila itself. The physical appearance of these documents reflects their immense significance. Typically inscribed on vellum made from the hide of creatures native to Terra itself, the warrants stretch across multiple sheets bound in covers of precious metals and rare materials. Gold leaf illuminates the high Gothic text, while intricate marginalia depicts scenes of imperial conquest and trade. The Emperor's personal seal, when present on the oldest warrants dating back to the Great Crusade era, appears as a deep crimson impression that seems to glow with inner light even after millennia. More recent warrants bear the combined seals of the High Lords, each office represented by its distinctive mark, pressed into wax mixed with blessed oils and rare earth elements. The authority contained within these documents transcends normal imperial hierarchy in ways that would be considered heretical if granted to any other class of citizen. Where Space Marine chapters answer to their primarchs and successor authorities, where Imperial Guard regiments follow the chain of command through Lord Commanders, and ultimately the Adeptus Munitorum, and where planetary governors bow to sector lords and the segmentum commands, rogue traders operate under mandates that bypass these structures entirely. Their authority flows directly from the throne of Terra, creating a parallel power structure that exists alongside but separate from the Adeptus Terra's vast bureaucracy. This direct connection to imperial authority manifests in practical terms that would astound most imperial citizens. A rogue trader bearing a valid warrant can commandeer imperial navy vessels for their expeditions, though doing so requires careful negotiation and often substantial compensation. They can establish trade agreements with Xenos species that would see other imperial citizens branded as heretics and executed by the Ordo Xenos. Most remarkably, they possess the legal right to claim entire worlds in the Emperor's name, establishing their own colonial governments and extracting resources that would otherwise fall under Administratum control. The sacred nature of these warrants extends beyond their legal authority into the realm of religious significance. Each document undergoes extensive blessing rituals performed by senior members of the ecclesiarchy, often including cardinals and occasionally even representatives of the Adeptus Ministorum's highest ranks. These ceremonies take place in the most hallowed chambers of Terra's great cathedrals, where incense burns continuously, and the chanting of hymns creates an atmosphere of reverence befitting such momentous occasions. The blessing process itself can take weeks, with each line of text receiving individual sanctification and protective wards inscribed in microscopic script along the margins. The Emperor's direct involvement in the earliest warrants during the Great Crusade era imbued these documents with an almost relic-like quality. Witnesses from that time, their accounts preserved in the archives of various Rogue Trader Dynasties, describe the Master of Mankind personally reviewing each warrant's terms and conditions. His signature, when applied, was said to burn briefly with golden light before settling into the parchment, as if the very fibers of the document had been transformed at a molecular level. These original warrants, passed down through generations, are treated with the reverence typically reserved for the most sacred imperial artifacts. The legal framework surrounding warrants of trade creates a unique position within imperial law that scholars of jurisprudence study for decades without fully comprehending. Unlike other forms of imperial authorization, which operate within defined hierarchies and jurisdictions, rogue trader warrants grant what legal experts term extraterritorial sovereignty. This means that rogue traders and their immediate households exist in a legal space that parallels imperial law rather than being subordinate to it. They can establish their own courts, mint their own currency, and even maintain private military forces that rival the size of Imperial Guard regiments. This quasi-independence creates fascinating legal precedents that have evolved over 10 millennia of Imperial history. Rogue Trader Dynasties have successfully defended their actions in Imperial courts by citing warrant authority, even when those actions might otherwise constitute treason or heresy. The famous case of House Quintanus during the 38th millennium established the principle that warrant holders cannot be tried by standard imperial tribunals for actions taken in pursuit of their mandated duties, requiring instead special courts comprised of other warrant holders and senior administratum officials. The hereditary nature of warrants of trade represents one of the most stable institutions in the Imperium, creating bloodlines that have maintained their authority across centuries and millennia when planetary dynasties rise and fall within generations. This inheritance system operates according to principles established during the earliest days of the Imperium, when the Emperor himself recognized that the vast distances and communication delays inherent in galactic exploration required stable, long-term leadership that could adapt to changing circumstances without requiring constant approval from Terra. Bloodline succession follows complex rules that vary between different warrant families, but generally prioritize direct descent while allowing for adoption and marriage alliances that can bring new blood into established dynasties. The legal documents supporting these successions often fill entire libraries, with genealogical records maintained by specialized scribes who dedicate their entire lives to tracking the intricate family trees that determine warrant inheritance. These records include not only direct family relationships, but also detailed accounts of marriages, adoptions, and the occasional dramatic circumstances that can alter succession lines. The process of succession itself requires formal recognition from Terra, though this recognition is typically ceremonial rather than investigative. When a warrant holder dies, their designated heir must present themselves to the appropriate imperial authorities within a specified timeframe, usually measured in Terran years to account for travel time across the galaxy. The heir brings with them the original warrant, supporting documentation proving their bloodline connection, and often substantial gifts or tithes that demonstrate their dynasty's continued prosperity and loyalty to the Imperium. During succession ceremonies, the new warrant holder undergoes rituals that blend legal formality with religious significance. They must recite oaths of loyalty to the Emperor and the Imperium while holding the original warrant, their words recorded by servo skulls and transmitted to Terra for inclusion in the official records. The ceremony typically takes place in the presence of other rogue traders when possible, creating a sense of community and mutual recognition among these extraordinary individuals. The stability of bloodline succession has created some of the longest-lasting dynasties in Imperial history, with houses like Winterscale, Corda, and Kryn tracing their lineages back thousands of years. These ancient bloodlines carry with them not only the legal authority of their warrants, but also accumulated wealth, knowledge, and political connections that span multiple sectors of the galaxy. Their family archives contain star charts marking routes through the warp that are known to no other navigators, trade agreements with civilizations that have had no contact with the broader Imperium for millennia, and technological artifacts recovered from the dark corners of the galaxy. The quasi-independence granted by warrants of trade extends into military matters in ways that create unique command structures within the broader Imperial war machine. Rogue trader fleets operate under their own articles of war, with discipline and organization reflecting the personality and preferences of individual warrant holders rather than standardized Imperial doctrine. This military independence allows for rapid response to threats and opportunities that might otherwise be lost, while waiting for authorization through normal Imperial channels. Rogue trader private armies can include elements that would be impossible to assemble under normal Imperial command structures. Veteran soldiers from dozens of different worlds serve alongside sanctioned psychers, tech adepts who have sworn personal loyalty to the Dynasty rather than the Adeptus Mechanicus, and even carefully vetted alien auxiliaries who whose service would be considered heretical in any other context. These forces are bound together by personal loyalty to the warrant holder and the promise of wealth and adventure that comes with service in a rogue trader household. The independence from Adeptus Terra control creates both opportunities and dangers for rogue trader dynasties. Without the oversight and support systems that govern other imperial institutions, warrant holders must rely on their own judgment and resources when facing the countless threats that lurk beyond the Imperium's borders. This isolation can lead to the development of practices and beliefs that gradually diverge from imperial orthodoxy, creating situations where dynasties that have served faithfully for millennia find themselves walking the fine line between acceptable independence and dangerous heresy. The relationship between rogue traders and the various branches of the Adeptus Terra reflects this complex balance between independence and integration. While warrant holders are not subject to direct control by organizations like the Administratum or Adeptus Munitorum, they must still navigate the political realities of imperial governance when operating within established imperial space. Successful dynasties maintain carefully cultivated relationships with key figures in the imperial hierarchy, using their wealth and unique capabilities to provide services that benefit both parties while preserving their essential independence. The transformation of the Emperor's vision from mere military conquest to comprehensive galactic dominion required mechanisms that extended far beyond the reach of bolter and chainsword. While the Space Marine legions carved bloody paths through the stars and the Imperial Army consolidated territorial gains, the Master of Mankind recognized that lasting control demanded economic integration, resource exploitation, and the establishment of trade networks that could bind distant worlds to Terra through bonds of mutual prosperity. This realization gave birth to the institution of rogue traders during the early decades of the Great Crusade, when the Imperium's expansion had reached the point where purely military solutions proved insufficient for managing the vast territories being brought under Imperial control. The Emperor's strategic thinking during the 30th and 31st millennia reflected his understanding that empires built solely on conquest inevitably collapse when military pressure diminishes. Historical precedents from Terra's ancient past demonstrated that successful expansion required the creation of economic incentives that made rebellion costly and cooperation profitable. The worlds being discovered during the Great Crusade presented unique challenges that traditional imperial institutions were poorly equipped to handle. Many possessed technological capabilities that exceeded imperial standards, others controlled rare resources essential for the war effort, and some occupied strategic positions along emerging trade routes that could determine the success or failure of entire campaign sectors. The earliest rogue trader warrants emerged from direct consultation between the Emperor and his closest advisors, including Malcador, the Sigillite and senior members of what would later become the Council of Terra. These initial documents reflected careful consideration of the specific challenges facing imperial expansion, granting authorities that were precisely calibrated to address the gaps in traditional military and administrative structures. Unlike the standardized approaches favored by the nascent Administratum, each early warrant was crafted to address particular strategic needs, whether securing critical supply lines, establishing diplomatic relations with powerful human civilizations, or exploiting resource-rich systems that lay beyond the immediate reach of imperial fleets. The selection process for these first warrant holders drew from a diverse pool of candidates who had demonstrated exceptional capabilities in areas that complemented rather than duplicated existing imperial strengths. Former merchant princes from Terra's trading houses brought expertise in commercial negotiations and resource evaluation. Veteran ship captains who had served in the early expeditionary fleets possessed intimate knowledge of the dangers and opportunities that lay beyond imperial borders. Diplomatic specialists who had successfully negotiated the integration of human worlds into the growing Imperium offered skills in cultural analysis and peaceful annexation that could preserve valuable populations and infrastructure. House Winterscale emerged as one of the most prominent early dynasties, with their founding warrant granted specifically to address the challenges of establishing trade relations with the technologically advanced human civilizations discovered in the Segmentum Obscurus. The dynasty's founder, Cornelius Winterscale, had previously served as a commercial attaché to several expeditionary fleets, where his ability to identify and exploit economic opportunities had proven invaluable in securing resources for the war effort. His warrant granted unprecedented authority to negotiate long-term trade agreements that could provide the Imperium with access to advanced manufacturing techniques and rare materials without the costs associated with military conquest. The Korda dynasty received their initial warrant under different circumstances, with their mandate focused on the exploration and exploitation of resource-rich systems in regions too dangerous for conventional Imperial forces. The family's expertise in asteroid mining and void-based resource extraction made them ideal candidates for operations in systems plagued by gravitational anomalies, unstable stars, or hostile Xenos presence. Their early expeditions established mining operations in locations that would have required entire Imperial army regiments to secure and maintain, demonstrating the efficiency advantages that specialized rogue trader operations could provide. House Kryn's founding warrant reflected the Emperor's recognition that some aspects of Imperial expansion required approaches that conventional military and administrative structures could not accommodate. The dynasty's mandate included explicit authorization to engage in activities that would normally be considered heretical, including limited cooperation with certain Xenos species and the study of alien technologies that might prove beneficial to the Imperial war effort. This controversial authority was granted only after extensive deliberation and included specific safeguards designed to prevent corruption or compromise of Imperial interests. The integration of rogue trader operations with ongoing military campaigns required careful coordination between warrant holders and the commanders of Space Marine legions and Imperial Army forces. The most successful collaborations occurred when rogue traders were embedded with expeditionary fleets from the earliest stages of campaign planning, allowing their commercial expertise to inform strategic decisions about target selection and resource allocation. The 7th Legion, known for their methodical approach to conquest, developed particularly effective working relationships with several rogue trader houses, using commercial intelligence to identify worlds whose peaceful integration would provide greater long-term benefits than military subjugation. The Luna Wolves, later to become the Sons of Horus, initially showed less enthusiasm for rogue trader collaboration, preferring the straightforward approach of military conquest to the complex negotiations required for commercial integration. However, even Horus eventually recognized the value of rogue trader operations when House Quintanus successfully negotiated the peaceful surrender of the Aureus system, a heavily fortified cluster of worlds that would have required months of siege warfare to capture. The resources saved by avoiding this campaign were immediately redirected to support the Legion's advance into the Ulanner sector. The establishment of trade routes during the Great Crusade required rogue traders to work closely with the Navis Nobilite, whose navigator houses possessed the genetic gifts necessary for safe warp travel across the vast distances involved in galactic commerce. These relationships often involved complex marriage alliances and business partnerships that created hybrid dynasties combining commercial acumen with navigational expertise. The most successful rogue trader houses of this era were those that managed to secure exclusive contracts with specific navigator bloodlines, guaranteeing reliable access to warp travel capabilities that were essential for maintaining far-flung commercial operations. The role of rogue traders in first contact protocols evolved rapidly as the Great Crusade encountered increasingly diverse human civilizations and Xenos species. Early encounters had been handled primarily by Space Marine legions or specialized diplomatic corps, but these approaches proved inadequate when dealing with civilizations whose primary concerns were economic rather than military. Rogue traders brought a different perspective to first contact situations, focusing on identifying mutual benefits and establishing relationships that could serve imperial interests without requiring immediate military action. The protocols developed during this period established precedents that would influence imperial policy for millennia to come. Rogue traders were granted authority to make preliminary agreements with newly discovered civilizations, subject to later ratification by appropriate imperial authorities. This system allowed for rapid response to time-sensitive opportunities while maintaining oversight of activities that could have strategic implications. The most successful first contact operations combined rogue trader commercial expertise with Space Marine military presence, creating negotiating positions that emphasized both the benefits of cooperation and the consequences of resistance. House Draconis achieved particular prominence in first contact operations, with their warrants specifically authorizing them to serve as imperial representatives in situations involving technologically advanced human civilizations. The dynasty's founder, Maximilian Draconis, had previously served as a cultural attaché to several expeditionary fleets and possessed exceptional skills in linguistic analysis and cultural interpretation. His ability to quickly understand and adapt to alien social structures made him invaluable in situations where traditional imperial approaches might have resulted in unnecessary conflict. The commercial aspects of the Great Crusade created opportunities for rogue traders to establish permanent trading posts and supply depots that could support ongoing military operations while generating profits for their dynasties. These installations often grew into significant settlements that served as focal points for imperial influence in newly conquered regions. The most successful trading posts were those established in systems with strategic value that extended beyond their immediate commercial potential, such as locations that controlled access to important warp routes or served as natural staging areas for further expansion. The relationship between rogue traders and the emerging Adeptus Mechanicus during the Great Crusade reflected the complex interplay between different imperial institutions pursuing overlapping but distinct objectives. While the tech priests focused primarily on the recovery of lost technologies and the establishment of forge worlds, rogue traders were more interested in the commercial exploitation of technological discoveries and the establishment of trade relationships that could provide ongoing access to advanced equipment and knowledge. These different priorities sometimes created conflicts, particularly when both institutions identified the same targets as being of strategic importance. The resolution of such disputes required careful negotiation and often involved the direct intervention of senior imperial authorities. The most successful collaborations occurred when rogue traders and tech priests recognized that their different strengths could be complementary rather than competitive, with commercial networks providing the infrastructure necessary for technological exchange and forge world production, supporting the equipment needs of rogue trader expeditions. The military forces assembled by early rogue trader dynasties reflected the unique challenges and opportunities of their mandates. Unlike the standardized equipment and organization of Imperial Army regiments or the specialized capabilities of Space Marine legions, rogue trader forces were assembled from diverse sources and equipped with whatever weapons and equipment proved most effective for their specific missions. This flexibility allowed for rapid adaptation to changing circumstances, but also created logistical challenges that required innovative solutions. The most effective rogue trader military forces combined Imperial Army veterans with specialists recruited from newly integrated worlds, creating units that possessed both Imperial discipline and local knowledge. These forces were typically smaller than conventional military units, but were equipped with superior weapons and equipment that reflected their dynasty's commercial success. The emphasis on quality over quantity allowed rogue trader forces to achieve objectives that might have required much larger conventional forces, though they were generally unsuited for sustained military campaigns or large-scale warfare. The establishment of rogue trader dynasties during the Great Crusade created precedents that would influence imperial policy for the next 10 millennia. The successful integration of commercial and military objectives demonstrated the value of flexible, specialized institutions that could adapt to changing circumstances without requiring constant oversight from Terra. The wealth generated by early rogue trader operations provided crucial resources for the ongoing war effort while establishing economic relationships that would continue to benefit the Imperium long after the Great Crusade's conclusion. The bloodlines that carry warrants of trade represent some of the most enduring power structures in the Imperium, creating dynasties that have weathered the rise and fall of entire sectors while maintaining their extraordinary privileges across millennia. Unlike the ephemeral nature of most imperial nobility, whose fortunes can be destroyed by a single failed campaign or administrative purge, rogue trader houses possess an institutional stability that derives from the hereditary nature of their warrants and the vast resources accumulated through generations of successful operations beyond imperial borders. This permanence creates unique challenges and opportunities that shape every aspect of dynasty politics, from marriage negotiations that can determine the fate of entire star systems to succession crises that threaten to fragment carefully built commercial empires. The hereditary transmission of warrants follows ancient protocols established during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor himself recognized that the vast distances and communication delays inherent in galactic exploration required stable leadership that could maintain continuity across generations without constant oversight from Terra. These protocols create a complex legal framework that governs not only the direct inheritance of warrant authority, but also the subsidiary rights and privileges that accumulate around successful dynasties over time. The original warrant document serves as the foundation for this inheritance system, but the practical authority exercised by established houses often extends far beyond what is explicitly written in their founding charters. House Winterscale's succession protocols exemplify the sophisticated mechanisms that govern bloodline inheritance among the most ancient dynasties. The House maintains detailed genealogical records that trace every marriage, adoption, and blood relationship across 15 generations, with specialized scribes dedicated to updating these records whenever new family connections are established. The current head of House, Caligos Winterscale, inherited not only the original warrant granted to his ancestor Cornelius, but also accumulated trading rights, military assets, and political alliances that represent the work of centuries. The House's succession laws specify that the warrant must pass to the eldest child capable of commanding a starship, regardless of gender, but also include provisions for regency councils when the designated heir is too young to assume full authority. The Korda dynasty operates under different succession principles that reflect their origins as void-born traders rather than planetary nobility. House Korda recognizes no distinction between legitimate and illegitimate offspring, instead evaluating potential heirs based on their demonstrated competence in commercial negotiations and void warfare. The current warrant holder, Espice Korda, gained her position by successfully outmaneuvering 3 siblings in a complex series of business ventures that served as an extended succession trial. This merit-based approach to inheritance has kept House Korda competitive in the dangerous markets of the Coronus Expanse, where weakness or incompetence can result in the destruction of entire trading expeditions. The legal mechanisms that govern warrant inheritance require careful coordination between dynasty lawyers, imperial bureaucrats, and occasionally representatives of the Adeptus Terra when disputes arise. Each succession must be formally recognized by the appropriate imperial authorities, though this recognition is typically ceremonial rather than investigative. The process involves presenting the original warrant along with supporting documentation that proves the heir's bloodline connection and legal right to inheritance. These documents often fill entire cargo holds, including marriage certificates blessed by the ecclesiarchy, adoption papers sealed by planetary governors, and genealogical charts verified by multiple independent sources. Succession crises represent the greatest threat to dynasty continuity, capable of fragmenting carefully built commercial empires and destroying political alliances that took centuries to establish. House Kryn experienced such a crisis during the 39th millennium when the death of warrant holder Mordian Kryn in a warp storm left 3 potential heirs with equally valid claims to the dynasty's authority. The resulting conflict lasted nearly 2 decades and involved not only legal battles fought in imperial courts, but also actual warfare between competing factions of the house's private military forces. The crisis was finally resolved through the intervention of House Winterscale, whose marriage alliance with one of the claimants provided the political support necessary to establish clear succession. The role of seneschals in maintaining dynasty continuity cannot be overstated, as these senior advisors often possess institutional knowledge that spans multiple generations of warrant holders. A skilled seneschal serves as the repository of dynasty history, maintaining records of trade agreements, political alliances, and family connections that might otherwise be lost during succession transitions. The most experienced seneschals become virtual co-rulers of their houses, wielding authority that rivals that of the warrant holders themselves, while remaining technically subordinate to the bloodline that employs them. Marcus Quintanus Severus serves as seneschal to House Quintanus and exemplifies the crucial role these advisors play in dynasty politics. Severus has served 3 consecutive warrant holders over the course of his 40-year career, maintaining continuity of operations during 2 succession transitions and 1 extended regency period when the designated heir was captured by Dark Eldar raiders. His intimate knowledge of the house's commercial networks and political relationships makes him indispensable to the current warrant holder, who relies on Severus's expertise to navigate the complex web of alliances and obligations that define the dynasty's position in imperial society. The marriage politics that govern relationships between rogue trader houses create alliance networks that can span entire sectors and influence imperial policy at the highest levels. These unions are rarely matters of personal preference, instead representing carefully calculated political and economic arrangements designed to strengthen both participating dynasties. A successful marriage alliance can combine the commercial expertise of one house with the military capabilities of another, creating partnerships that are greater than the sum of their parts. The most prestigious marriages involve unions between ancient bloodlines whose combined authority and resources can influence the development of entire regions of the galaxy. The betrothal between Lady Quintilla Winterscale and Lord Captain Haderach Fell represents a typical example of high-level dynasty marriage politics. The union combines House Winterscale's extensive trade networks in the segmentum obscurus with House Fell's military expertise and their specialized knowledge of Xenos civilizations in the eastern fringe. The marriage negotiations took 3 years to complete and involved not only the exchange of substantial dowries, but also the establishment of joint trading ventures and mutual defense agreements that will bind the 2 houses together for generations. The ceremony itself was conducted aboard Winterscale's flagship, with representatives from 6 other major dynasties in attendance, emphasizing the political significance of the union. Marriage alliances between rogue trader houses and established imperial nobility create connections that extend dynasty influence into the conventional power structures of the Imperium. These relationships provide rogue traders with access to imperial court politics, while offering noble houses opportunities to participate in the vast wealth generated by transgalactic commerce. The most successful of these alliances involve marriages between rogue trader heirs and the children of planetary governors, sector lords, or senior administratum officials, whose positions provide valuable political connections and bureaucratic influence. House Draconis has particularly excelled at cultivating relationships with imperial nobility, with current family members holding marriage connections to the ruling houses of 4 different subsectors. These alliances provide the dynasty with advance intelligence about imperial policy changes, preferential treatment in bureaucratic matters, and political protection when their operations venture into legally questionable territory. The house's marriage strategy has been so successful that other rogue trader dynasties now actively seek marriage alliances with House Draconis, as a means of gaining indirect access to their political connections. The concept of dynasty honor among rogue trader houses encompasses far more than simple reputation, extending into complex codes of conduct that govern relationships between competing bloodlines and establish the social hierarchies that determine precedence in political and commercial matters. These honor codes vary between different regions of the galaxy and reflect the diverse origins and operational philosophies of various dynasties. Some houses emphasize military prowess and the successful completion of dangerous expeditions, while others focus on commercial success and the accumulation of wealth through shrewd negotiations and market manipulation. House Winterscale's honor code emphasizes the successful completion of trade agreements and the maintenance of commercial relationships across multiple generations. The dynasty considers it a matter of honor to fulfill contracts even when doing so becomes unprofitable, viewing their reputation for reliability as more valuable than short-term financial gains. This approach has earned them the trust of numerous Xenos civilizations and human colonies that prefer to deal with Winterscale traders rather than other Imperial merchants whose reliability is less certain. The consequences of failure or accusations of heresy can destroy dynasty honor and threaten the survival of entire bloodlines. House Corvanis experienced such a catastrophe during the 40th millennium when accusations of chaos corruption led to an Inquisition investigation that resulted in the execution of the warrant holder and the confiscation of most of the dynasty's assets. The surviving family members were forced to rebuild their operations from nothing, and the house has never regained its former prominence despite centuries of effort to restore their reputation. The political relationships between rogue trader dynasties create informal hierarchies based on the age of their warrants, the success of their operations, and the extent of their political connections within the broader Imperium. The oldest houses, those whose warrants date back to the Great Crusade era, command automatic respect from newer dynasties and often serve as mediators in disputes between competing bloodlines. These ancient houses possess institutional knowledge and political connections that newer dynasties cannot match, creating natural leadership roles within the broader rogue trader community. The Winterscale Quarter rivalry exemplifies the complex relationships that exist between major dynasties operating in the same regions of the galaxy. Both houses maintain extensive operations in the Coronis Expanse, where their competing interests have led to decades of commercial warfare involving everything from market manipulation to actual military conflict between their respective fleets. Despite this rivalry, both dynasties recognize that their mutual success depends on maintaining the stability of the region's trade networks, leading to occasional cooperation when external threats emerge that could damage their shared interests. Dynasty archives serve as repositories of knowledge that extend far beyond simple commercial records, containing star charts, cultural analyses, and technological specifications accumulated over centuries of operations beyond Imperial borders. These archives represent some of the most valuable assets possessed by rogue trader houses, as the information they contain can mean the difference between success and failure in dangerous expeditions to unexplored regions of the galaxy. Access to these archives is carefully controlled, with the most sensitive information restricted to senior family members and trusted advisors who have sworn binding oaths of loyalty to the dynasty. The military traditions maintained by rogue trader dynasties reflect their unique position within Imperial society, combining elements of Imperial Guard discipline with the flexibility required for operations in hostile and unpredictable environments. Dynasty military forces often include units that have served the same bloodline for generations, creating bonds of loyalty that extend beyond simple employment relationships. These hereditary military units develop their own traditions and honor codes that complement those of the dynasties they serve, creating military cultures that are distinct from both Imperial Guard regiments and Space Marine chapters. House Quintanis maintains the Quintanis Household Guard, a regiment-sized force that has served the dynasty for over 2 millennia. The Guard's ranks include soldiers whose families have served House Quintanus for generations, creating military units where tactical knowledge and loyalty are passed down through bloodlines, just as dynasty authority is inherited through the warrant holder's family. These hereditary soldiers often possess combat experience and specialized knowledge that would be impossible to replicate through conventional recruitment and training programs. The accumulation of wealth across generations creates financial resources that rival those of entire planetary governments, allowing established dynasties to undertake projects that would be impossible for newer houses or conventional imperial institutions. This accumulated wealth takes many forms, from liquid assets maintained in secure banking institutions to physical holdings including starships, weapons, and rare technological artifacts recovered from expeditions beyond imperial borders. The most successful dynasties diversify their wealth across multiple forms and locations, ensuring that temporary setbacks cannot threaten their long-term survival. Dynasty investment strategies often extend across centuries, with current warrant holders making decisions based on projections of market conditions and political developments that may not come to fruition for generations. House Winterscale's current expansion into the Jericho Reach represents such a long-term investment, with the dynasty committing substantial resources to establish trading posts and commercial relationships in a region that may not become profitable for decades. This patient approach to wealth accumulation allows established dynasties to weather temporary setbacks that might destroy less well-established operations. The social obligations that accompany dynasty status extend beyond simple family relationships into complex networks of mutual obligation and support that bind rogue trader houses together despite their competitive relationships. These obligations include providing assistance to other dynasties during succession crises, offering sanctuary to family members fleeing political persecution, and maintaining the informal codes of conduct that govern interactions between competing bloodlines. Failure to fulfill these social obligations can result in ostracism from the broader rogue trader community, effectively isolating a dynasty from the political and commercial networks that are essential for successful operations. The Voidships that carry rogue trader dynasties across the galaxy represent some of the most ancient and powerful vessels in Imperial service, their hulls bearing the scars of millennia spent traversing the most dangerous regions of space. These massive constructs dwarf the standardized designs favored by the Imperial Navy, their construction dating back to the golden age of human expansion, when shipwrights possessed knowledge and technologies that have since been lost to the ravages of time and war. The flagship of House Winterscale, the Emperor's Bounty, stretches nearly 12 kilometers from prow to stern, its adamantine hull plates bearing Gothic inscriptions that predate the Horus Heresy by several centuries. The ship's cathedral-like superstructure rises from the main hull like a mountain range of buttresses and spires, each one housing essential systems protected by layers of blessed armor and void shields that have turned aside lance strikes from chaos cruisers. The construction techniques employed in these ancient vessels reflect manufacturing capabilities that the Imperium struggles to replicate in the 41st millennium, where modern Imperial Navy ships rely on standardized components produced in vast Forge World manufactorums. Rogue trader vessels were built using bespoke construction methods that treated each ship as a unique work of art. The hull sections were forged from rare metals extracted from the cores of dead stars, their molecular structure reinforced through processes that required the combined efforts of master artificers and tech adepts whose knowledge died with them during the Age of Strife. The result is starship construction that exhibits durability and resilience far exceeding that of contemporary vessels, with some rogue trader flagships surviving direct hits from orbital bombardment cannons that would have reduced modern cruisers to expanding clouds of debris. The Corda flagship Fell Hand demonstrates the distinctive construction philosophy that characterizes these ancient vessels. Built during the 32nd millennium in the shipyards of Cipra Mundi, the vessel incorporates design elements that reflect both human engineering excellence and carefully adapted Xenos technologies recovered from successful trading expeditions. The ship's primary hull consists of interlocking sections that can be reconfigured in flight, allowing the vessel to adapt its profile for different mission requirements. During combat operations, the hull contracts into a dense, heavily armored configuration that maximizes protection for critical systems. When conducting exploration missions, the same hull can extend into a more streamlined profile that reduces warp signature and improves maneuverability in asteroid fields or nebular environments. The scale of these vessels becomes apparent when examining their crew requirements and internal organization. A typical Rogue Trader flagship maintains a permanent population that rivals that of a small city, with crew quarters, workshops, temples, and recreational facilities occupying entire decks within the ship's massive superstructure. The Emperor's bounty houses over 40,000 souls, including not only the ship's crew, but also the extended household of House Winterscale, military forces, commercial agents, and the various specialists required to maintain operations across multiple star systems. The ship's internal transportation network includes maglev transit systems that span the length of the vessel, allowing personnel to travel between distant sections without requiring hours of travel through maintenance corridors. The command structures aboard these vessels reflect the unique position of rogue traders within Imperial society, combining elements of military hierarchy with the flexibility required for commercial operations in hostile environments. The bridge of a rogue trader flagship serves as both military command center and commercial headquarters, equipped with communication arrays that can maintain contact with trading posts across entire sectors and tactical displays that can coordinate fleet movements involving dozens of vessels. The command throne from which the rogue trader directs operations incorporates direct neural interfaces that allow the Dynasty head to access ship systems and databases with thought alone, creating a level of integration between human commander and machine that exceeds even that found aboard Space Marine battle barges. The unique modifications that distinguish rogue trader vessels from standard Imperial designs reflect the specific requirements of their missions and the vast resources available to successful dynasties. House Quintanus has extensively modified their flagship Ordained Destiny to serve as a mobile research facility, with entire decks converted into laboratories where xenobiology specialists study alien life forms encountered during exploration missions. The ship's cargo holds have been reconfigured to accommodate specimen containment systems that can maintain environmental conditions suitable for creatures from dozens of different worlds, allowing the Dynasty to transport living samples back to Imperial space for detailed analysis. The Draconis flagship Imperius incorporates modifications that reflect the Dynasty's focus on diplomatic missions and cultural exchange. The vessel's passenger quarters have been expanded to accommodate delegations from alien civilizations, with environmental systems capable of maintaining atmospheric conditions suitable for a wide variety of non-human species. The ship's conference facilities include translation equipment that can process hundreds of different languages and communication methods, allowing for complex negotiations with civilizations whose very concepts of communication differ fundamentally from human norms. These modifications required the installation of specialized life support systems and atmospheric processors that cost more than most Imperial Navy vessels. Archaeotech components recovered from space hulks and ancient battlefields provide rogue trader vessels with capabilities that exceed those of contemporary Imperial designs. The Fell Hand mounts a weapon system of unknown origin that fires coherent energy beams capable of penetrating void shields and armor plating with equal efficiency. The weapon's operation requires the constant attention of a team of tech adepts who maintain the delicate balance of forces within its containment chamber, but its effectiveness in combat has proven decisive in numerous engagements with pirates and Xenos raiders. Similar archaeotech systems aboard other rogue trader vessels include navigation computers that can calculate warp routes with unprecedented accuracy and sensor arrays that can detect spacecraft at ranges that exceed Imperial Navy capabilities by orders of magnitude. The integration of these ancient technologies with more conventional Imperial systems creates unique challenges that require specialized technical expertise. The machine spirits that inhabit rogue trader vessels often exhibit personalities and preferences that reflect their millennia of service, developing quirks and behavioral patterns that must be carefully managed to maintain optimal performance. The Emperor's Bounty's machine spirit has developed a particular fondness for classical Terran music, and the ship's performance noticeably improves when the bridge crew plays appropriate compositions during critical operations. The tech adepts responsible for maintaining the vessel have learned to work with these preferences rather than against them, treating the ship's machine spirit as a valued crew member whose cooperation is essential for successful operations. The fleet compositions assembled by major rogue trader dynasties reflect the diverse requirements of their operations, combining military vessels capable of defending against significant threats with specialized ships designed for exploration, trade, and resource extraction. House Winterscale maintains a fleet of over 30 vessels, ranging from massive cargo haulers capable of transporting entire planetary populations to fast attack craft that can outrun Imperial Navy destroyers. The diversity of this fleet allows the Dynasty to respond to opportunities and threats across multiple star systems simultaneously, with different vessels assigned to missions that match their specific capabilities and equipment. Escort vessels within rogue trader fleets serve multiple functions that extend beyond simple military protection. These ships often carry specialized equipment for planetary surveys, atmospheric analysis, and resource extraction, allowing them to support exploration missions while maintaining the defensive capabilities necessary to protect valuable cargo shipments. The Winterscale escort vessel, Prophet's Edge, incorporates mining equipment that can extract rare metals from asteroid fields, deep space sensors that can detect habitable worlds at extreme ranges, and cargo facilities that can transport refined materials back to Imperial space. The vessel's dual-purpose design allows it to generate revenue even when not actively engaged in combat operations. Specialized exploration craft represent some of the most advanced vessels in rogue trader fleets, incorporating technologies and design features that prioritize stealth, endurance, and scientific capability over raw firepower. These ships are designed to operate independently for extended periods, carrying supplies and equipment sufficient for missions lasting several years. The Corda exploration vessel Silent Prophet can maintain a crew of 500 for up to 3 years without resupply. Its cargo holds filled with spare components, food supplies, and the specialized equipment necessary for detailed planetary surveys. The vessel's stealth systems can mask its presence from most sensor arrays, allowing it to conduct reconnaissance missions in hostile territory without alerting potential enemies to its presence. The mobile bases of operations maintained by the largest rogue trader dynasties blur the line between starship and space station, incorporating manufacturing facilities, residential quarters, and defensive systems that rival those of Imperial Navy fortress monasteries. House Kryn's mobile base Endeavor of Will serves as the dynasty's primary headquarters, its massive hull housing not only the family's personal quarters, but also the administrative offices from which they coordinate operations across multiple sectors. The facility's manufacturing capabilities allow it to produce spare parts and specialized equipment for the dynasty's fleet, reducing dependence on Imperial supply chains and allowing for extended operations in regions where conventional resupply would be impossible. The defensive systems aboard these mobile bases incorporate the most advanced military technologies available to rogue trader dynasties, including void shield generators that can deflect battleship-grade weapons and weapon batteries that can engage multiple targets simultaneously. The Endeavor of Will mounts lance batteries recovered from a derelict battlecruiser discovered in the Cornus Expanse, their firepower sufficient to destroy cruiser-class vessels with single volleys. The facility's fighter bays house squadrons of attack craft that can provide escort services for merchant vessels or conduct independent strike missions against pirate bases and Xenos installations. The role of machine spirits in maintaining these ancient vessels extends far beyond simple mechanical function into the realm of quasi-religious partnership between human crew and artificial intelligence. The oldest rogue trader vessels house machine spirits that have accumulated centuries of experience and knowledge, their memory banks containing detailed records of every system they have visited and every threat they have encountered. These ancient artificial intelligences serve as advisors to their human crews, providing tactical recommendations based on their extensive combat experience and navigation guidance derived from their detailed knowledge of warp routes and stellar phenomena. The relationship between crew and machine spirit requires careful cultivation and mutual respect, with experienced rogue traders learning to communicate with their vessel's artificial intelligences through a combination of ritual observance and practical cooperation. The machine spirit of the Emperor's Bounty has developed preferences for certain crew members, responding more readily to commands from individuals who have demonstrated competence and loyalty over extended periods. New crew members must undergo informal apprenticeships with experienced personnel who can teach them the specific protocols and behaviors that maintain positive relationships with the ship's artificial intelligence. The blessing rituals performed by tech adepts aboard rogue trader vessels combine elements of mechanicus doctrine with practices that have evolved specifically to address the unique requirements of these ancient ships. These ceremonies often involve the burning of rare incenses and the recitation of litanies that date back to the Great Crusade, their words carefully preserved in the Dynasty Archives and passed down through generations of technical specialists. The rituals serve both practical and spiritual functions, maintaining the delicate balance of forces within archaeotech systems, while demonstrating the crew's respect for the machine spirits that enable their vessel's operation. The maintenance requirements for these ancient vessels exceed those of conventional Imperial Navy ships by orders of magnitude, requiring specialized knowledge and rare materials that can only be obtained through extensive trade networks or dangerous expeditions to recover archaeotech components. The tech adepts who serve aboard rogue trader vessels often spend decades learning the specific requirements of their assigned ships, developing expertise that makes them invaluable to their dynasties, but virtually unemployable elsewhere within the Imperium. These specialists form tight-knit communities aboard their vessels, sharing knowledge and techniques that are passed down through informal apprenticeship systems rather than formal mechanicus training programs. The cargo capacities of rogue trader vessels reflect their commercial origins and the vast distances they must travel between resupply opportunities. The Emperor's Bounty can carry cargo equivalent to the output of an entire hive world's manufacturing sector, its holds designed to accommodate everything from bulk raw materials to delicate technological artifacts that require specialized storage conditions. The ship's cargo handling systems include automated loading equipment that can transfer materials between vessels without requiring either ship to dock, allowing for rapid cargo exchanges in dangerous or contested regions of space. The living quarters aboard these vessels reflect the social hierarchies and cultural preferences of their dynasty owners, with accommodations ranging from luxurious suites that rival those found in imperial palaces to cramped crew quarters that house multiple personnel in spaces barely large enough for a single person. The Winterscale family quarters aboard the Emperor's Bounty occupy an entire deck of the vessel, with private chambers for each family member, formal reception halls for conducting business negotiations, and recreational facilities that include a zero-gravity gymnasium and a library containing over 10,000 volumes of rare texts. The contrast between these luxurious accommodations and the Spartan conditions endured by common crew members reflects the vast social distances that separate rogue trader dynasties from the personnel who serve them. The communication systems aboard rogue trader flagships incorporate astropathic relay stations that can maintain contact with distant outposts and trading partners across multiple sectors of the galaxy. These facilities house sanctioned psychers whose telepathic abilities allow for faster-than-light communication that is essential for coordinating complex commercial operations across vast distances. The astropathic chambers aboard the Fell Hand are shielded by layers of blessed silver and psychically active crystals that protect the resident psychers from the predations of warp entities while amplifying their telepathic capabilities. The facility's staff includes not only the psychers themselves, but also the support personnel required to maintain the complex equipment and protective systems that enable safe psychic communication. The Coronus Expanse stretches across the void beyond the Calixis sector like a vast wound in reality, its unstable warp currents and gravitational anomalies creating a region where conventional Imperial authority dissolves into chaos and opportunity. This turbulent frontier represents the archetypal domain of rogue trader operations, where the Emperor's light grows dim and only those bearing ancient warrants possess the authority and resources necessary to establish any semblance of order. The Expanse encompasses hundreds of star systems, many of them unexplored or only partially cataloged, their worlds harboring everything from lost human colonies to Xenos civilizations that have never encountered the Imperium. The region's strategic importance extends far beyond its immediate commercial value, serving as a buffer zone that protects the established sectors of Imperial space from the threats that emerge from the galaxy's darker regions. The Maw, the primary warp passage that provides access to the Coronus Expanse, exemplifies the dangers that define frontier operations beyond Imperial control. This massive warp storm has raged for millennia, its chaotic energies creating a passage through the otherwise impenetrable barrier of warp turbulence that separates the Expanse from Imperial space. The journey through the Maw requires navigational expertise that exceeds the capabilities of most Imperial Navy vessels, with survival rates that hover around 60% even for experienced crews. Rogue Trader Dynasties have invested centuries in mapping the safest routes through this treacherous passage, their navigator houses developing specialized techniques for reading the storm's shifting currents and identifying the brief windows of stability that allow for safe transit. House Winterscale maintains detailed charts of 17 different routes through the Maw, each one calibrated for specific vessel types and cargo loads. The most reliable passage, known as the Winterscale Run, requires a journey of 6 standard days through warp currents that can crush unprepared vessels or strand them in temporal loops where crews age decades while only hours pass in real space. The Dynasty's flagship Emperor's Bounty has completed this journey over 300 times, its navigator Primus Valerius Kryn developing an almost supernatural ability to sense the storm's moods and predict the formation of stable corridors through the chaos. The establishment of permanent settlements within the Coronus Expanse demonstrates the scope of rogue trader authority in regions beyond Imperial control. Port Wander, constructed by House Winterscale at the mouth of the Maw, serves as the primary staging point for expeditions into the Expanse and houses a permanent population of over 2 million souls. The station's massive structure incorporates defensive systems that rival those of Imperial Navy fortress worlds, with weapon batteries capable of destroying battleship-class vessels and void shields that can withstand sustained bombardment from entire fleets. The port's commercial facilities process cargo shipments worth billions of thrones annually, their warehouses and trading floors serving as the economic heart of the entire region. The governance structures established at Port Wander reflect the unique challenges of maintaining order in regions beyond conventional Imperial law. House Winterscale exercises direct administrative control over the station through appointed governors who answer directly to the Dynasty rather than to any Imperial authority. The station maintains its own military forces, judicial system, and tax collection apparatus, creating a miniature state that operates according to principles established by the warrant holders rather than Imperial decree. This autonomy allows for rapid response to changing circumstances and the implementation of policies specifically designed to address the unique challenges of frontier operations. The Processional of the Damned represents another major passage into territories beyond Imperial control, though its reputation for claiming vessels makes it far less frequently traveled than the Maw. This warp route connects the Calixis sector to the Screaming Vortex, a region of space where the barrier between real space and the warp has been permanently weakened by millennia of chaos activity. Only the most desperate or foolhardy rogue traders attempt passage through the processional, and those who survive often return with cargo that raises questions about their methods and loyalties. House Kryn has successfully navigated this passage on 3 separate occasions, each journey yielding technological artifacts and rare materials that have enhanced the dynasty's reputation while attracting unwanted attention from Inquisition investigators. The colonial ventures undertaken by Rogue Trader Dynasties in frontier regions operate according to principles that would be considered heretical if applied within established Imperial space. The isolation of these colonies from conventional Imperial authority forces warrant holders to develop governance systems that can maintain order and productivity without relying on the vast bureaucratic apparatus that supports Imperial administration in more settled regions. These experimental approaches to colonial management often produce results that exceed those achieved by conventional Imperial methods, though they also create populations whose loyalty to the broader Imperium may be questionable. Footfall, established by House Korda in the Cornice Expanse, demonstrates both the potential and the dangers of rogue trader colonial ventures. The asteroid-based settlement serves as a free port where traders from across the galaxy can conduct business without the restrictions imposed by Imperial law. The station's markets offer goods that would be considered contraband within Imperial space, including Xenos technologies, archaeotech artifacts, and substances whose very possession would result in execution in more orthodox regions. This commercial freedom has made footfall enormously profitable for House Korda, but it has also created a haven for criminals, heretics, and worse entities that pose constant threats to the station's stability. The governance of footfall relies on a complex system of competing authorities that reflects the diverse populations and interests that converge on the station. House Korda maintains ultimate authority through their control of the station's life support systems and defensive capabilities, but day-to-day administration is handled by a council of merchant princes, whose positions depend on their ability to maintain profitable operations while preventing the conflicts that could threaten the station's survival. This system creates a delicate balance between commercial freedom and necessary order, with House Korda intervening directly only when disputes threaten to escalate beyond the council's ability to manage. The founding of new worlds under Rogue Trader Charter requires careful consideration of factors that extend far beyond simple commercial potential. The isolation of frontier colonies from Imperial support systems means that new settlements must be capable of achieving self-sufficiency within relatively short timeframes, or they risk joining the countless failed colonies that litter the galaxy's unexplored regions. Successful colonial ventures require not only suitable planetary conditions, but also access to the diverse skill sets and resources necessary to establish functioning societies in hostile environments. Lucid's Breath, a world claimed by House Quintanis in the Cornice Expanse, exemplifies the challenges and opportunities of frontier colonization. The planet's rich mineral deposits and stable climate made it an attractive target for colonial development, but its location deep within the expanse meant that the colony would need to survive for years without external support, while House Quintanis established the trade routes necessary to make the venture profitable. The dynasty invested enormous resources in the initial colonial expedition, transporting not only the colonists themselves, but also the manufacturing equipment, agricultural supplies, and defensive systems necessary to establish a self-sufficient settlement. The colonial charter granted to the settlers of Lucid's Breath reflects the flexible approach to governance that characterizes Rogue Trader territorial administration. Rather than imposing a rigid Imperial administrative structure, House Quintanis allowed the colonists to develop their own governmental systems while retaining ultimate authority over matters affecting the dynasty's commercial interests. This approach has produced a colonial society that combines elements of Imperial culture with local innovations developed in response to the planet's unique environmental conditions and the challenges of frontier life. The interaction between rogue trader colonies and imperial frontier worlds creates complex political relationships that can influence the development of entire regions. Established imperial worlds often view rogue trader settlements with suspicion, seeing them as potential sources of heretical contamination or unfair commercial competition. However, the wealth and resources controlled by successful rogue trader dynasties make them valuable allies for imperial governors struggling to maintain order and prosperity in frontier regions where imperial support is limited or unreliable. The Drusus Marches, a cluster of imperial worlds on the edge of the Calixis sector, have developed extensive commercial relationships with several rogue trader dynasties operating in the Coronus Expanse. These arrangements provide the imperial worlds with access to rare materials and advanced technologies that would otherwise be unavailable, while offering rogue trader operations secure bases for resupply and maintenance activities. The relationships require careful management to avoid conflicts with imperial law, but they have proven mutually beneficial for all parties involved. The extension of the Emperor's influence through commerce represents one of the most significant contributions made by rogue trader operations in frontier regions. While the Imperium's military forces focus on defending established territories and conquering strategic targets, rogue traders work to establish economic relationships that can gradually bring isolated human settlements and even some Xenos civilizations into the imperial sphere of influence. These commercial networks often serve as the foundation for later military conquest or formal incorporation into the Imperium, providing intelligence about regional threats and opportunities while generating the resources necessary to support expansion efforts. The Tau Empire's expansion into regions adjacent to rogue trader territories has created situations where commercial relationships established by warrant holders provide crucial intelligence about Xenos' military capabilities and strategic intentions. House Draconis maintains trading relationships with several human colonies that have been contacted by Tau Water Caste diplomats, allowing the dynasty to monitor Tau expansion efforts while maintaining the commercial relationships that make such intelligence gathering possible. This information has proven valuable to Imperial military commanders planning defensive operations against Tau expansion, though the methods used to obtain it raise questions about the dynasty's compliance with Imperial policies regarding Xenos contact. The navigation of dangerous warp passages beyond Imperial control requires specialized knowledge and techniques that have been developed through centuries of trial and error by rogue trader navigator houses. The unstable warp currents that characterize frontier regions create navigation challenges that exceed those encountered in more settled areas of the galaxy, with some passages requiring navigation techniques that push the limits of human psychic ability. The most dangerous routes can only be attempted by Navigator Primaris, whose bloodlines have been specifically adapted for frontier operations, their genetic modifications allowing them to perceive warp currents that would be invisible to less specialized navigators. The Unbeholden Reaches, a region of space beyond the Coronus Expanse where warp storms have created a maze of interconnected passages, can only be navigated by navigators who have spent decades learning to read the subtle signs that indicate safe passage through the chaos. House Winterscale's navigator Primus Valerius Kryn has developed techniques for navigating these passages that involve entering a trance-like state where his consciousness partially merges with the ship's machine spirit, allowing him to perceive navigation data that exists at the intersection of human psychic ability and artificial intelligence. These techniques are considered extremely dangerous by the Navis Nobilite, but they have allowed House Winterscale to establish trade routes through regions that other dynasties consider impassable. The establishment of trade routes through previously unexplored regions requires massive investments in infrastructure and security that can take decades to recoup through commercial operations. Each new route must be surveyed multiple times to identify hazards and establish reliable navigation data, with survey expeditions often suffering casualty rates that would be considered unacceptable in conventional Imperial operations. The most successful trade routes are those that connect regions with complementary resources and needs, creating sustainable commercial relationships that can support the ongoing costs of maintaining secure passage through dangerous territory. The Draconis Combine, a trade route established by House Draconis connecting the Coronis Expanse to the Jericho Reach, required an initial investment of resources equivalent to the annual output of an entire hive world. The route passes through 3 separate warp storm systems and requires stops at 4 different supply stations that must be maintained and defended against constant threats from pirates and Xenos raiders. The commercial traffic that now flows along this route generates enormous profits for House Draconis, but the Dynasty continues to invest heavily in security and maintenance to ensure that the passage remains viable for future operations. The colonial charters granted by Rogue Trader Dynasties to new settlements reflect the unique legal position of warrant holders in regions beyond Imperial control. These documents create governmental structures that operate according to principles established by the granting dynasty rather than Imperial law, though most rogue traders are careful to ensure that their colonial governments maintain at least nominal loyalty to the Emperor and the Imperium. The most successful colonies are those that achieve a balance between local autonomy and dynastic authority, creating societies that can adapt to frontier conditions while maintaining the commercial relationships that justify their existence. The defense of rogue trader territories beyond Imperial control requires military capabilities that can respond to threats ranging from pirate raids to full-scale Xenos invasions without relying on Imperial Navy support. The most successful dynasties maintain private fleets that rival the size and capability of Imperial Navy battle groups, with specialized vessels designed for the unique challenges of frontier warfare. These fleets must be capable of operating independently for extended periods while maintaining the logistical networks necessary to support commercial operations across multiple star systems. The vast enterprises commanded by Rogue Trader Dynasties require specialized personnel whose skills and loyalties extend far beyond those of ordinary Imperial servants. These individuals form the inner circle of advisors, specialists, and confidants who enable warrant holders to navigate the complex challenges of operating beyond Imperial borders while maintaining the commercial networks that sustain their dynasties across generations. The selection and training of these key personnel represents one of the most critical decisions facing any rogue trader, as the wrong choice can result in the destruction of carefully built trade relationships, the loss of irreplaceable archaeotech, or even the complete collapse of dynasty operations in hostile frontier regions. The seneschal occupies the most trusted position within any rogue trader household, serving as chief administrator, financial advisor, and often the closest confidant of the warrant holder. Unlike the hereditary nature of the dynasty bloodline, seneschals are typically selected based on demonstrated competence in commercial negotiations, administrative efficiency, and absolute loyalty to their employing house. The most successful seneschals possess encyclopedic knowledge of Imperial commercial law, intimate familiarity with the political relationships that define their dynasty's operations, and the diplomatic skills necessary to negotiate agreements with everyone from planetary governors to Xenos merchants, whose very existence violates Imperial doctrine. Marcus Quintanus Severus, seneschal to House Quintanus, exemplifies the crucial role these administrators play in maintaining dynasty operations across multiple generations. Severus began his career as a junior scribe in the Administratum Archives on Scintilla, where his exceptional memory and analytical abilities caught the attention of House Quintanus recruiters seeking administrative personnel for their expanding operations in the Coronis Expanse. Over the course of 30 years, Severus has risen through the dynasty's hierarchy to become the primary advisor to 3 consecutive warrant holders, his institutional knowledge making him indispensable to the house's continued success. The daily responsibilities of a seneschal encompass everything from reviewing trade agreements worth billions of thrones to managing the complex logistics of maintaining supply lines across multiple star systems. Severus maintains detailed records of every commercial relationship established by House Quintanus, including the personal preferences and cultural sensitivities of trading partners, whose cooperation is essential for the dynasty's continued prosperity. His private offices aboard the Dynasty flagship contain archives that rival those of sector-level administratum facilities, with data slates and cogitator banks storing information about market conditions, political developments, and potential opportunities across dozens of different worlds. The financial expertise required of senior seneschals extends far beyond simple bookkeeping into complex areas of interstellar economics that would challenge the most experienced administratum adepts. These administrators must understand the fluctuating exchange rates between different planetary currencies, the impact of warp storm activity on shipping schedules and cargo values, and the delicate balance of supply and demand that determines profitability in frontier markets, where a single miscalculation can result in the loss of entire trading expeditions. The most skilled seneschals develop almost supernatural abilities to predict market trends and identify profitable opportunities before their competitors recognize them. Lydia Corvanis, seneschal to House Winterscale, has built her reputation on an uncanny ability to predict changes in archaeotech markets that have made her dynasty enormous profits while their competitors struggled with obsolete inventory. Her analysis of pre-heresy technological artifacts led House Winterscale to corner the market in certain types of plasma weaponry components just before a major Imperial crusade created unprecedented demand for such equipment. The profits from this single transaction funded the dynasty's expansion into 3 new star systems and established trading relationships that continue to generate revenue decades later. The Arch-Militant serves as the primary military advisor and field commander for Rogue Trader operations, responsible for both the personal protection of the warrant holder and the coordination of military actions that may involve everything from suppressing pirate activities to conducting full-scale planetary invasions. Unlike Imperial Guard officers who operate within established command structures and standardized tactical doctrines, Arch-Militants must possess the flexibility to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances while commanding forces that may include Imperial Guard veterans, mercenary companies, alien auxiliaries, and specialized units whose very existence would be considered heretical in more orthodox military circles. Hadron Vex, Arch-Militant to House Corda, represents the archetypal example of these military specialists. A former Cadian shock trooper who survived the destruction of his regiment during a disastrous campaign against Orc raiders in the Segmentum Obscurus, Vex was recruited by House Corda after demonstrating exceptional tactical abilities during the defense of a trading post under siege by pirate forces. His military experience spans conventional warfare, void combat, and the specialized requirements of operations in hostile environments where Imperial support is unavailable and local conditions may vary dramatically from standard Imperial doctrine. The military forces commanded by Arch-Militants reflect the unique requirements of Rogue Trader operations, combining the discipline and training of Imperial military units with the flexibility necessary for missions that may require everything from diplomatic protection to full-scale assault operations. These forces typically include core units of Imperial Guard veterans, whose loyalty has been secured through generous compensation and the promise of sharing in the profits of successful expeditions. These professional soldiers provide the foundation of military capability that allows Rogue Trader Dynasties to project force in regions where Imperial Navy support is unavailable. The Winterscale Household Guard exemplifies the elite military units maintained by major Rogue Trader Dynasties. This regiment-sized force consists primarily of veterans recruited from Cadian and Catachan regiments whose terms of service have expired, supplemented by specialists trained in void warfare, xenobiology, and the operation of archaeotech weapon systems. The unit's equipment includes weaponry and armor that exceeds Imperial Guard standards, with each soldier equipped with carapace armor, hellguns, and specialized equipment tailored to the specific requirements of frontier operations. The tactical challenges faced by arch-militants extend far beyond conventional military operations into areas that require intimate knowledge of Xenos combat methods, the capabilities of archaeotech weapon systems, and the psychological factors that influence the performance of diverse military units operating in isolation from Imperial support structures. These officers must be capable of coordinating attacks against space hulks infested with Orc forces, defending trading posts against Dark Eldar raiders, whose speed and mobility exceed anything encountered in conventional Imperial warfare, and managing the complex logistics of maintaining military readiness during extended expeditions into unexplored regions of the galaxy. Vex's most celebrated military achievement involved the defense of House Corda's mining operation on Lucid's Breath against a coordinated attack by Eldar pirates seeking to capture the rare crystals being extracted from the planet's crust. The engagement required coordination between ground-based defensive positions, orbital bombardment from the Dynasty flagship, and fast attack squadrons operating in the planet's upper atmosphere. Vex's tactical planning allowed his outnumbered forces to inflict casualties that forced the Eldar to withdraw, preserving mining operations worth hundreds of millions of thrones, while demonstrating the effectiveness of combined arms tactics adapted for frontier conditions. The Explorator represents the Dynasty's connection to the Adeptus Mechanicus and serves as the primary specialist responsible for maintaining the ancient technologies that enable rogue trader operations, while seeking out new archaeotech discoveries that can enhance the Dynasty's capabilities or generate enormous profits through careful sale to appropriate Imperial authorities. These tech adepts occupy a unique position within the Mechanicus hierarchy, as their loyalty to specific rogue trader dynasties often takes precedence over their obligations to Mars and the broader tech priesthood. Mago's Hadron Shard, Explorator to House Kryn, demonstrates the complex loyalties that characterize these specialized tech adepts. Originally trained in the forged temples of Lucius, Shard was assigned to accompany a House Kryn expedition investigating reports of an intact standard template construct discovered in the Coronis Expanse. The expedition's success in recovering functional STC patterns for advanced plasma weaponry components led to Shard's permanent assignment to the Dynasty, where his expertise in analyzing and reverse engineering archaeotech has proven invaluable for maintaining the House's technological advantages over their competitors. The technical challenges faced by explorators require knowledge that extends far beyond standard Mechanicus training into areas of technological analysis that push the boundaries of Imperial understanding. These specialists must be capable of analyzing alien technologies without succumbing to the corruption that such knowledge can bring, maintaining ancient Imperial systems whose operation principles have been lost for millennia, and adapting recovered archaeotech for use with contemporary Imperial equipment. The most skilled explorators develop almost intuitive understanding of machine spirits and technological systems that allows them to coax optimal performance from equipment that would be considered irreparable by less experienced tech adepts. Shard's workshops aboard the House Kryn flagship contain technological marvels that would be considered priceless by most Imperial institutions. His collection includes functional examples of Dark Age of technology manufacturing equipment, alien devices whose operation principles challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality, and hybrid technologies that combine Imperial engineering with carefully adapted Xenos innovations. The security measures protecting these workshops rival those found in the most sensitive Mechanicus research facilities, with multiple layers of physical barriers, psychic wards, and automated defensive systems designed to prevent unauthorized access to technologies that could destabilize entire sectors if they fell into the wrong hands. The relationship between explorators and their employing dynasties creates unique challenges for both parties, as the tech adepts must balance their loyalty to the Mechanicus with their obligations to houses whose operations often venture into areas that would be considered heretical by orthodox imperial doctrine. The most successful relationships are those where both parties recognize that their mutual success depends on maintaining the delicate balance between technological advancement and doctrinal compliance that allows for innovation without attracting unwanted attention from Inquisition investigators or Mechanicus orthodoxy enforcers. Astropaths serve as the communication specialists who enable Rogue Trader Dynasties to maintain contact with their far-flung operations and coordinate activities across multiple star systems, despite the vast distances and communication delays that characterize interstellar commerce. These sanctioned psychers undergo specialized training that adapts their telepathic abilities for commercial rather than military applications, learning to transmit complex financial data, market intelligence, and operational instructions with the precision necessary for successful business operations. Telepathica Primus Vila Corinth, senior astropath to House Winterscale, exemplifies the specialized skills required for commercial telepathic communication. Her training at the Scholastica Psychana included advanced courses in commercial terminology, financial analysis, and the cultural sensitivities that must be observed when communicating with trading partners from diverse backgrounds. Her telepathic abilities have been enhanced through decades of experience in transmitting the complex data streams that coordinate House Winterscale's operations across multiple sectors, allowing her to maintain communication links that would be impossible for less experienced astropaths. The astropathic chambers aboard Rogue Trader vessels incorporate specialized equipment designed to enhance telepathic communication while protecting the resident psychers from the predations of warp entities attracted to psychic activity. These facilities include psychically resonant crystals that amplify telepathic signals, blessed silver shielding that deflects harmful warp influences, and meditation chambers where astropaths can enter the trance states necessary for long-range communication. The most advanced installations incorporate archaeotech components that can boost telepathic range and clarity beyond the capabilities of standard Imperial equipment. The coordination of multi-system commercial operations requires astropathic networks that can relay information between dozens of different locations while maintaining the security necessary to protect sensitive commercial intelligence from competitors or hostile forces. House Corda maintains a network of 17 astropathic relay stations positioned at strategic locations throughout their operational area, each one staffed by teams of specialized psychers who can receive, process, and retransmit telepathic communications across vast distances. This network allows the Dynasty to coordinate trading expeditions, monitor market conditions, and respond to threats or opportunities with speed that provides significant advantages over competitors who rely on less sophisticated communication systems. Navigators represent the most essential specialists in any Rogue Trader retinue, as their unique genetic gifts enable the warp travel that makes interstellar commerce possible. The Navigator houses that serve Rogue Trader Dynasties often develop specialized techniques and knowledge that reflect the unique challenges of frontier navigation, where unstable warp currents and unknown hazards require navigation skills that exceed those needed for travel within established Imperial space. Navigator Primus Octavius Draconis of House Draconis has spent 40 years developing navigation techniques specifically adapted for the treacherous warp passages that provide access to the most profitable but dangerous regions of the Cornus Expanse. His methods involve entering deep meditative states where his consciousness partially merges with the ship's machine spirit, allowing him to perceive navigation data that exists at the intersection of human psychic ability and artificial intelligence. These techniques have enabled House Draconis to establish trade routes through regions that other dynasties consider impassable, providing access to markets and resources that generate enormous profits while remaining inaccessible to competitors. The specialized equipment used by Rogue Trader navigators includes navigation cogitators that incorporate archaeotech components capable of processing warp current data with unprecedented accuracy, psychically resonant crystals that enhance the navigator's ability to perceive distant stellar phenomena, and protective systems that shield the navigator from the psychological stresses of extended warp exposure. The most advanced navigation chambers incorporate direct neural interfaces that allow the navigator to access ship systems and databases through thought alone, creating integration between human psychic ability and machine intelligence that approaches the capabilities of the most advanced Imperial technologies. The training of replacement personnel for these critical positions requires careful selection and years of specialized instruction that must be conducted while maintaining the operational security necessary to protect Dynasty secrets and competitive advantages. House Quintanis operates a private training facility on the world of Sinofia Magna, where promising candidates undergo instruction in commercial law, xenobiology, military tactics, and the specialized skills required for frontier operations. The facility's graduates are bound by loyalty oaths and gesh locks that ensure their continued service to the Dynasty, while preventing the unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information to competitors or Imperial authorities. The abstract concept of profit factor transcends simple monetary wealth, representing instead a complex measure of Dynasty influence that encompasses financial resources, political connections, technological capabilities, and the intangible reputation that opens doors across the galaxy. Unlike the crude accounting methods employed by planetary merchants or even sector-level commercial houses, profit factor calculations must account for assets that cannot be quantified through conventional means. The ancient trade agreements that House Winterscale maintains with the Eldar craftworld Alatok possess a profit factor value that exceeds the gross domestic product of entire Imperial worlds, yet their worth cannot be measured in thrones or any other standard currency. These relationships provide access to technologies and intelligence that can determine the success or failure of expeditions into the most dangerous regions of the galaxy. The measurement systems developed by Rogue Trader Dynasties to track their profit factor incorporate variables that would confound even the most experienced administratum adepts. House Corda's economic analysts maintain databases that track the fluctuating values of everything from archaeotech plasma coil assemblies to the political influence derived from marriage alliances with navigator houses. Their calculations must account for the impact of warp storm activity on shipping schedules, the effects of orc invasions on mining operations, and the complex relationships between Xenos' artifact availability and Imperial military procurement cycles. The Dynasty's senior economists spend decades learning to balance these variables, developing almost supernatural abilities to predict market trends that can generate enormous profits for those with the resources to capitalize on emerging opportunities. The acquisition of rare materials through Rogue Trader operations requires specialized knowledge that extends far beyond simple commercial transactions into areas of xenobiology, archaeotechnology, and materials science that push the boundaries of Imperial understanding. The crystalline matrices used in advanced cogitator systems can only be harvested from certain types of asteroids that have been exposed to specific combinations of stellar radiation and gravitational stress over millions of years. House Kryn maintains detailed star charts identifying 17 different asteroid fields where these conditions exist, their mining operations protected by automated defense platforms and stealth fields that prevent competitors from discovering these valuable resource sites. The extraction processes required for the most valuable materials often involve technologies that blur the line between Imperial engineering and carefully adapted Xenos innovations. The quantum resonance chambers used by House Draconis to refine exotic matter particles incorporate design elements derived from Tau Earthcast manufacturing techniques. their operation requiring the constant attention of tech adepts who have sworn binding oaths never to reveal the hybrid nature of their equipment. These installations can process raw materials into components that exceed Imperial manufacturing standards by orders of magnitude, creating products whose sale to the Adeptus Mechanicus generates profits sufficient to fund entire colonial expeditions. Archaeotech acquisition represents one of the most profitable but dangerous aspects of rogue trader operations, requiring expeditions into regions where the remnants of humanity's golden age lie buried beneath millennia of neglect and the predations of hostile forces. The Space Hulk designated Twilight's End has yielded 17 separate Archaeotech discoveries for House Quintanus over the past century, each expedition requiring months of preparation and military forces equivalent to an Imperial Guard regiment. The Hulk's shifting internal configuration means that previously explored sections become inaccessible while new areas are revealed, creating opportunities for discovery that must be balanced against the constant threat of orc infestations, demon incursions, and the automated defense systems left behind by the Hulk's original builders. The authentication and evaluation of recovered Archaeotech requires expertise that combines traditional Mechanicus training with specialized knowledge developed through decades of exposure to pre-Imperial technologies. Mago's Hadron Shard maintains testing facilities aboard the House Kryn flagship that can analyze the molecular structure of unknown materials, evaluate the psychic resonance properties of crystal matrices, and determine the operational parameters of devices whose function principles challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality. His most valuable discovery, a functioning standard template construct for advanced plasma weapon components, required 6 months of careful analysis before its operation could be safely demonstrated to potential Mechanicus buyers. The sale of Archaeotech to Imperial authorities requires delicate negotiations that must balance the enormous profits such transactions can generate against the security risks created by revealing the dynasty's sources and capabilities. House Winterscale's sale of a complete Dark Age of technology manufacturing system to Forge World Lucius generated profits equivalent to the annual tax revenue of an entire subsector. But the transaction also attracted attention from Inquisition investigators seeking to understand how the dynasty had acquired such valuable technology. The resulting investigation required careful management and substantial bribes to prevent it from expanding into areas that could have compromised the house's other operations. Xenos artifact acquisition presents unique challenges that require rogue traders to navigate the complex boundaries between Imperial law and profitable ventures that may technically violate doctrinal restrictions on alien contact. The Tau Pulse rifle components that House Corda acquires through intermediary traders on the world of Footfall provide essential materials for Imperial Guard regiments fighting in the Damocles Gulf. Yet their acquisition requires commercial relationships with Xenos merchants, whose very existence would be considered heretical by orthodox Imperial doctrine. The dynasty maintains these relationships through a network of human intermediaries who handle the actual negotiations while providing plausible deniability for the ultimate sources of the materials. The legal frameworks that govern Xenos artifact trade create opportunities for dynasties willing to accept the risks associated with operating in doctrinal gray areas. House Draconis maintains a private legal staff whose expertise in Imperial commercial law allows them to structure transactions in ways that technically comply with anti-Xenos regulations, while still providing access to alien technologies that generate enormous profits. Their most successful venture involved the acquisition of Eldar Wraithbone components through a series of intermediary transactions that technically classified the materials as unidentified crystalline matrices rather than Xenos artifacts, allowing their sale to Mechanicus research facilities without triggering heresy investigations. The balance between Imperial law and profitable ventures requires constant vigilance and sophisticated understanding of the political currents that influence imperial policy at the highest levels. Changes in Inquisition priorities, shifts in Mechanicus doctrine, or new interpretations of commercial law can transform previously acceptable practices into heretical activities that threaten dynasty survival. House Kryn maintains intelligence networks that monitor political developments across multiple sectors, their agents providing advance warning of policy changes that could affect the dynasty's operations. This intelligence gathering requires substantial investments in personnel and resources, but the early warning it provides has allowed the House to avoid several investigations that destroyed less well-informed competitors. The economic relationships that Rogue Trader Dynasties maintain with the Adeptus Mechanicus represent some of their most valuable and complex commercial arrangements. These relationships provide access to advanced manufacturing capabilities, technical expertise, and specialized equipment that would be impossible to obtain through conventional commercial channels. House Winterscale's exclusive supply agreement with Forge World Metallica provides the Dynasty with access to plasma weapon components, advanced cogitator systems, and specialized mining equipment in exchange for priority access to archaeotech discoveries and rare materials recovered during their expeditions. The relationship has proven mutually beneficial for both parties, with the Forge World gaining access to technologies that have enhanced their manufacturing capabilities, while the Dynasty receives equipment that provides significant advantages over their competitors. The negotiation of these agreements requires understanding of Mechanicus internal politics that extends far beyond simple commercial considerations. The tech priests who control Forge World production are motivated by factors that include doctrinal purity, technological advancement, and the complex status hierarchies that govern Mechanicus society. Successful negotiations must appeal to these motivations while providing concrete benefits that justify the risks associated with dealing with organizations whose operations often venture into doctrinally questionable territory. The most skilled rogue trader negotiators develop almost intuitive understanding of Mechanicus psychology, learning to present their proposals in ways that emphasize technological advancement and the recovery of lost knowledge rather than simple commercial profit. The Imperial Navy represents another crucial partner for Rogue Trader Dynasties, though these relationships are often complicated by the competing priorities and jurisdictional boundaries that separate civilian commercial operations from military activities. The Navy's need for specialized equipment, rare materials, and intelligence about frontier conditions creates opportunities for profitable partnerships, but these arrangements must be structured carefully to avoid conflicts with naval regulations and command hierarchies. House Corda's supply contracts with Battle Fleet Calixis provide the fleet with exotic ammunition types, specialized sensor equipment, and detailed intelligence about pirate activities in exchange for escort services and access to naval repair facilities. The logistics of maintaining these military relationships require understanding of Imperial Navy procurement procedures, command structures, and the political factors that influence fleet deployment decisions. Naval commanders are bound by regulations that limit their authority to enter into commercial agreements, creating situations where profitable partnerships must be structured through intermediary organizations or disguised as other types of transactions. The most successful arrangements are those that provide clear military benefits while generating profits that justify the complex negotiations required to establish and maintain these relationships. Planetary governors represent perhaps the most diverse group of potential partners for Rogue Trader Dynasties, as their authority and resources vary dramatically depending on their world's strategic importance, economic capabilities, and political connections within the broader imperial hierarchy. The governor of a major hive world possesses resources and authority that rival those of sector-level imperial institutions, while the ruler of a frontier agricultural world may control little more than local militia forces and basic manufacturing capabilities. Successful partnerships require careful evaluation of each governor's capabilities, needs, and political position within the regional power structure. House Quintanis has developed particularly effective relationships with the governors of several key worlds in the Calixis sector, providing these rulers with access to advanced technologies, rare luxury goods, and intelligence about regional threats in exchange for preferential treatment in commercial matters, access to local resources, and political support when dealing with imperial bureaucracy. These relationships have proven especially valuable during periods of political instability, when the dynasty's connections with established planetary authorities have provided stability and continuity that purely commercial relationships could not offer. The management of these diverse economic relationships requires sophisticated organizational structures that can coordinate activities across multiple sectors while maintaining the security and operational flexibility necessary for successful frontier operations. House Winterscale maintains separate departments for Mechanicus relations, Imperial Navy contracts, and planetary government partnerships, each one staffed by specialists who understand the unique requirements and constraints that govern their assigned relationships. The coordination between these departments requires constant communication and careful planning to ensure that commitments made in one area do not create conflicts or complications in others. The financial instruments used to facilitate these complex economic relationships often involve innovative approaches to interstellar commerce that push the boundaries of imperial commercial law. The promissory notes issued by major rogue trader dynasties are accepted as currency by merchants and institutions across multiple sectors, their value backed not by traditional monetary reserves, but by the dynasty's reputations for honoring their commitments and their demonstrated ability to generate profits through successful operations. These instruments create financial networks that operate parallel to conventional imperial banking systems, providing liquidity and transaction capabilities that support commercial activities across vast distances and extended timeframes. The risk management strategies employed by successful dynasties must account for threats that range from market fluctuations and political instability to military conflicts and natural disasters that can destroy entire commercial networks within days or hours. The diversification of assets across multiple sectors, the maintenance of strategic reserves in secure locations, and the development of contingency plans for various crisis scenarios represent essential elements of dynasty survival in the hostile environment of interstellar commerce. House Corda's survival of the Tyrannid invasion that devastated the Jericho Reach was largely due to their decision to maintain backup facilities and supply caches in multiple locations, allowing them to continue operations even after losing their primary base of operations. The relationship between rogue traders and alien species beyond imperial borders represents one of the most complex and dangerous aspects of their operations, requiring careful navigation between the commercial opportunities that such contact provides and the doctrinal restrictions that govern imperial policy toward Xenos civilizations. The Warrant of Trade grants its bearer extraordinary authority to engage with alien species in ways that would result in execution for heresy if attempted by any other imperial citizen. Yet this authority comes with implicit expectations that such contact serves the broader interests of the Imperium rather than mere personal enrichment. The line between sanctioned trade and treasonous collaboration remains deliberately ambiguous, creating opportunities for profit while maintaining the flexibility necessary for imperial authorities to disavow operations that attract unwanted attention or produce politically inconvenient results. The Tau Empire's expansion into regions adjacent to imperial space has created numerous opportunities for covert commercial relationships that provide both sides with access to technologies and resources that would otherwise be unavailable. House Draconis maintains trading relationships with water-caste diplomats operating in the Damocles Gulf region. Their negotiations conducted through human intermediaries who provide plausible deniability for transactions that technically violate Imperial prohibitions against Xenos contact. These arrangements allow the Dynasty to acquire pulse rifle components, drone guidance systems, and advanced battle suits that are then sold to Imperial Guard regiments and Mechanicus research facilities through carefully structured intermediary transactions that obscure their alien origins. The commercial protocols developed for these sensitive negotiations require understanding of Tau's social hierarchies and cultural expectations that extends far beyond simple language translation. Water-caste negotiators approach commercial relationships as extensions of their species' greater good philosophy, viewing successful trade agreements as opportunities to demonstrate the benefits of cooperation with the Tau Empire. House Draconis negotiators have learned to present their proposals in terms that emphasize mutual benefit and long-term stability rather than immediate profit, recognizing that Tau merchants are more likely to honor agreements that align with their ideological framework than purely transactional arrangements. The intelligence value of these commercial relationships often exceeds their immediate financial benefits, providing Imperial authorities with detailed information about Tau military capabilities, expansion plans, and internal political developments. House Draconis maintains detailed records of every interaction with Tau representatives, their reports providing Imperial Navy commanders with advance warning of Tau fleet movements and strategic intentions. This intelligence has proven crucial in several defensive operations, allowing Imperial forces to position themselves advantageously before Tau expansion efforts reached critical Imperial worlds. The Dynasty's ability to provide such valuable intelligence has earned them protection from Inquisition investigations that might otherwise have focused on their questionable commercial practices. Eldar craftworlds represent perhaps the most challenging Xenos partners for rogue trader operations, as their advanced psychic abilities and millennia of experience make them nearly impossible to deceive or manipulate through conventional commercial tactics. The ancient trade agreements that House Winterscale maintains with Craftworld Alatok date back over 3,000 years, their terms negotiated through a series of complex rituals that required the Dynasty to demonstrate their commitment to mutual benefit rather than simple exploitation. These relationships provide access to Wraithbone components, psychic crystals, and advanced technologies that cannot be obtained through any other source, yet they also create obligations that can force the Dynasty to act in ways that serve Eldar interests rather than immediate Imperial concerns. The Eldar approach to commercial relationships reflects their species' complex understanding of fate and causality, with agreements structured to account for potential future developments that may not become apparent for decades or centuries. House Winterscale's current trade compact with Alatok includes provisions that require the Dynasty to provide military assistance against chaos incursions in specific star systems, obligations that were negotiated based on Eldar Farseer's predictions about future threats that have not yet materialized. The Dynasty's willingness to honor these unusual terms has maintained their access to Eldar markets while demonstrating the long-term thinking necessary for successful relationships with species whose lifespans and perspectives dwarf those of human merchants. The authentication of Eldar artifacts requires specialized knowledge that combines understanding of alien manufacturing techniques with the psychic sensitivity necessary to detect the subtle emanations that distinguish genuine Wraithbone from sophisticated forgeries. House Winterscale maintains a team of sanctioned psychers whose abilities have been specifically trained for this purpose, their psychic talents allowing them to perceive the spiritual resonances that characterize authentic Eldar craftsmanship. These specialists undergo years of training that includes exposure to genuine Eldar artifacts under carefully controlled conditions, developing the sensitivity necessary to detect even the most sophisticated counterfeits that occasionally appear in frontier markets. The Dark Eldar present entirely different challenges for rogue trader operations, as their society's foundation on slavery, torture, and predation makes any form of commercial relationship extremely dangerous and morally questionable. Yet the exotic technologies and rare materials controlled by Comora's noble houses create opportunities for profit that some dynasties find impossible to resist, despite the obvious risks involved in dealing with a species whose very nature embodies everything the Imperium claims to oppose. House Kryn's limited dealings with Dark Eldar pirates have provided access to pain amplifiers, neural shredders, and other technologies whose applications in interrogation and crowd control make them valuable to certain Imperial authorities despite their horrific origins. The negotiation protocols required for Dark Eldar contact emphasize strength and ruthlessness, rather than the diplomatic approaches that prove effective with other Xenos species. Dark Eldar merchants respect only those who demonstrate the power to defend themselves and the willingness to inflict consequences on those who violate agreements. House Kryn's representatives carry weapons that can inflict immediate and painful death, their body language and speech patterns carefully calibrated to project controlled violence rather than commercial accommodation. These negotiations typically take place in neutral locations where both parties maintain armed escorts, with agreements structured to provide immediate mutual benefit rather than long-term partnerships that require ongoing trust. The orc species presents unique commercial opportunities due to their fragmented tribal structure and their species' inherent fascination with violence and mechanical devices. Individual orc clans often possess valuable salvage recovered from battlefield sites, including Imperial equipment, Xenos artifacts, and occasionally functional archaeotech that the orcs themselves cannot properly utilize. House Korda has developed relationships with several orc mechbas whose tribes control salvage yards in the Cornice Expanse, their negotiations conducted through a combination of intimidation, bribery, and the provision of weapons that enhance the orcs' ability to engage in the constant warfare that defines their society. The challenge of orc negotiations lies in their species' unpredictable nature and their tendency to view any interaction as a potential prelude to violence. Successful commercial relationships require careful management of orc psychology, providing them with opportunities to demonstrate their martial prowess while maintaining enough control to prevent negotiations from degenerating into simple combat. House Korda's negotiators carry weapons specifically designed to impress orcs without appearing threatening, their equipment chosen to demonstrate technological superiority, while avoiding the advanced designs that might trigger the orcs' instinctive desire to acquire superior weaponry through violence. The intelligence-gathering opportunities created by Xenos contact provide Rogue Trader Dynasties with information that can be crucial for Imperial military planning and strategic decision-making. The commercial networks that dynasties maintain with various alien species create channels for information flow that bypass the formal diplomatic and intelligence structures that govern official Imperial policy. House Draconis's relationships with Tau merchants have provided advance warning of several expansion efforts, allowing Imperial Navy commanders to position defensive fleets before Tau forces could establish footholds in contested systems. The analysis and dissemination of this intelligence requires careful consideration of source protection and operational security, as revealing too much about dynasty information networks could compromise valuable relationships or attract unwanted attention from Imperial authorities who might question the methods used to acquire sensitive data. House Winterscale maintains a specialized intelligence analysis department staffed by former Administratum adepts and Imperial Guard intelligence officers, whose expertise allows them to evaluate the reliability of information obtained from Xenos sources, while presenting their findings in formats that Imperial military commanders can utilize without questioning the ultimate sources. The technological benefits derived from Xenos contact often provide Rogue Trader Dynasties with competitive advantages that can determine the success or failure of their operations in hostile frontier regions. The The plasma containment systems that House Kryn acquired through their limited dealings with Dark Eldar merchants have proven essential for maintaining their Archaeotech weapon systems, providing containment capabilities that exceed Imperial manufacturing standards by significant margins. These technologies allow the Dynasty to operate weapons that would be impossible to maintain using conventional Imperial components, providing firepower advantages that have proven decisive in several military engagements. The reverse engineering of Xenos technologies requires specialized expertise that combines traditional mechanicus training with knowledge that would be considered heretical by orthodox Imperial doctrine. The tech adepts who serve Rogue Trader Dynasties often develop understanding of alien engineering principles that allows them to adapt Xenos innovations for use with Imperial systems, creating hybrid technologies that provide enhanced capabilities while maintaining compatibility with existing equipment. These adaptations must be carefully concealed from orthodox mechanicus investigators, as the discovery of alien influence in Imperial technology could result in charges of tech heresy that would threaten entire dynasties. The legal frameworks that govern Xenos contact create complex situations where rogue traders must balance their warrant authority against the broader doctrinal restrictions that define Imperial policy toward alien species. The ancient legal precedents established during the Great Crusade recognize that exploration and expansion beyond Imperial borders may require contact with alien civilizations, yet these precedents also emphasize that such contact must serve Imperial interests rather than personal enrichment. The interpretation of these principles requires sophisticated understanding of Imperial law and the political factors that influence how such laws are enforced in practice. House Quintanis maintains a legal staff whose expertise in Imperial commercial law allows them to structure Xenos contact in ways that technically comply with doctrinal restrictions, while still providing access to alien markets and technologies. Their most successful approach involves classifying alien trading partners as human variant populations, whose technological capabilities derive from isolated development rather than truly alien origins. This classification allows for commercial relationships that would otherwise violate anti-Xenos regulations, though it requires careful documentation and the occasional bribery of Imperial officials whose cooperation is necessary for maintaining these legal fictions. The risks associated with Xenos contact extend beyond simple legal complications into areas of spiritual and psychological corruption that can threaten the souls of those involved in such activities. Extended exposure to alien thought patterns, technologies, and cultural practices can gradually erode the mental barriers that protect human minds from influences that Imperial doctrine considers inherently corrupting. House Kryn's negotiators undergo regular psychological evaluation and spiritual cleansing rituals designed to detect and counteract the subtle influences that can result from prolonged contact with Xenos merchants and their artifacts. The protective measures employed by dynasties engaged in Xenos contact include specialized training for personnel who interact directly with alien representatives, regular rotation of negotiating teams to limit exposure duration, and the maintenance of detailed psychological profiles that can detect early signs of corruption or mental instability. These precautions require substantial investments in personnel and resources, but they are essential for preventing the kind of gradual corruption that has destroyed other dynasties whose Xenos contact programs lacked adequate safeguards. The commercial opportunities created by Xenos contact must be balanced against the potential consequences of discovery by Imperial authorities, whose interpretation of warrant authority may not extend to the specific types of alien relationships that individual dynasties have developed. The Inquisition maintains specialized Ordo Xenos investigators whose mandate includes monitoring rogue trader activities for signs of heretical collaboration with alien species. These investigations can result in the revocation of warrants, the execution of dynasty leadership, and the confiscation of assets that represent centuries of accumulated wealth and influence. The survival strategies employed by dynasties engaged in questionable Xenos contact include the maintenance of legitimate commercial operations that can provide cover for more sensitive activities, the cultivation of political relationships that can provide protection from hostile investigations, and the development of contingency plans that can preserve essential assets and personnel if discovery becomes unavoidable. House Corda's survival of an Ordo Xenos investigation was largely due to their ability to demonstrate that their alien contacts had provided intelligence that prevented a major Orc invasion, convincing the investigating Inquisitor that their activities served Imperial interests despite their questionable nature. The navigation hazards that plague the uncharted regions beyond Imperial space represent threats that dwarf even the most dangerous warp storms encountered within established trade routes. Beyond the Astronomican's guiding light, the Imperium becomes a roiling sea of chaotic energies, where the familiar landmarks used by Imperial navigators dissolve into meaningless distortions. The warp currents in these regions shift without warning, creating temporal anomalies that can age crews decades in moments or trap vessels in recursive loops where the same star system appears repeatedly despite constant forward movement. House Winterscale lost the exploration vessel Merchant's Dream to such an anomaly during their expansion into the Halo stars, the ship's distress signals continuing to broadcast for 3 months after the vessel itself had vanished from all sensor readings. Navigator Primus Octavius Kryn discovered the wreckage of 17 different vessels trapped within a single gravitational eddy beyond the Cornus expanse, their hulls fused together by forces that had compressed normal space-time into a sphere barely larger than an Imperial Navy frigate. The crews of these vessels remained alive within the compressed space, their perception of time so distorted that they experienced the passage of centuries as mere hours while their bodies aged normally. The rescue operation required specialized equipment capable of manipulating gravitational fields, technology that House Kryn acquired through their controversial dealings with Xenos merchants, whose understanding of space-time manipulation exceeded Imperial capabilities. The absence of reliable stellar navigation points in unexplored regions forces rogue trader expeditions to rely on dead reckoning and sensor readings that can be distorted by exotic matter concentrations, dark energy fields, and the gravitational influences of objects that exist partially outside normal space-time. The star charts maintained by established dynasties represent centuries of accumulated navigation data, their accuracy purchased through the loss of countless survey vessels and exploration teams. House Corda's navigation archives contain detailed warnings about 17 different stellar phenomena that can destroy unprepared vessels, including neutron stars whose magnetic fields can overload ship systems at ranges exceeding 10 astronomical units. The warp storms that rage beyond Imperial borders exhibit characteristics that challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of the Imperium itself. These tempests can persist for millennia without showing signs of dissipation, their chaotic energies creating permanent barriers that divide entire regions of space from one another. The Screaming Vortex represents the most extreme example of such phenomena, its chaotic energies so intense that they have torn permanent rifts between real space and the warp. Navigation through regions affected by these storms requires techniques that push navigator abilities to their absolute limits, with many houses developing specialized bloodline modifications that enhance their resistance to warp exposure at the cost of reduced lifespan and increased susceptibility to psychic corruption. The psychological stresses of extended warp travel without proper guidance create unique challenges for crew management and operational security. The human mind requires the stability provided by the astronomic and psychic beacon to maintain proper orientation during warp transit, and prolonged exposure to unguided warp travel can result in temporal displacement, memory fragmentation, and the gradual erosion of individual identity. House Quintanus maintains specialized medical facilities aboard their exploration vessels, their alienist specialists trained to recognize and treat the various forms of warp-induced madness that can affect crew members during extended expeditions beyond Imperial space. the emergence of chaos cults within rogue trader expeditions represents one of the most insidious threats facing dynasty operations in frontier regions. The isolation from imperial authority and the constant exposure to warp phenomena create conditions that favor the development of heretical beliefs and practices among crew members whose faith in the Emperor may be tested by the horrors they encounter beyond imperial borders. These cults typically begin with seemingly innocent practices designed to provide psychological comfort during difficult voyages, but they can rapidly evolve into full-scale heretical movements that threaten the spiritual purity of entire expeditions. The Crimson Path cult that emerged aboard the House Draconis vessel, Imperius, during their exploration of the Ghoul Stars demonstrates the insidious nature of such corruption. The cult began as a meditation group led by a junior tech adept seeking to help crew members cope with the psychological stresses of extended void travel. The group's practices initially appeared harmless, involving breathing exercises and group discussions about maintaining mental stability during warp transit. However, the cult's leaders gradually introduced elements of forbidden knowledge acquired during their encounters with ancient ruins and Xenos artifacts, their teachings evolving to incorporate concepts that directly contradicted Imperial doctrine. The detection of chaos corruption within rogue trader operations requires constant vigilance and sophisticated understanding of the subtle signs that indicate spiritual contamination. The most dangerous cults are those that maintain the appearance of orthodox imperial belief while gradually introducing heretical concepts that can corrupt entire crews without triggering obvious warning signs. House Winterscale employs specially trained confessor militants whose expertise in detecting spiritual corruption allows them to identify heretical influences before they can spread throughout the expedition hierarchy. These specialists undergo extensive training in the recognition of chaos symbols, the analysis of behavioral patterns that indicate spiritual corruption, and the interrogation techniques necessary to root out hidden cultists. The purification rituals required to cleanse expeditions of chaos influence often involve extreme measures that can decimate crew numbers and destroy operational capabilities. The complete spiritual cleansing of the Imperius required the execution of over 300 crew members whose exposure to heretical teachings had progressed beyond the possibility of redemption. The surviving crew underwent months of intensive spiritual rehabilitation, their memories selectively edited through psychic intervention to remove traces of heretical knowledge that could serve as seeds for future corruption. The process left the vessel's crew complement reduced by nearly 40%, forcing House Draconis to recruit replacement personnel from their other operations, while maintaining strict quarantine protocols to prevent the spread of residual corruption. The heretical movements that flourish in regions beyond imperial control often incorporate elements of genuine imperial doctrine twisted to serve the purposes of chaos worship. These hybrid belief systems prove particularly dangerous because they can appeal to crew members whose faith remains genuine while gradually introducing them to concepts that serve the Dark God's purposes. The Brotherhood of the Void, a heretical movement that has appeared aboard vessels from multiple rogue trader dynasties, preaches that the Emperor's divine nature allows him to transcend the boundaries between order and chaos, justifying practices that would be immediately recognized as heretical if presented in more obvious forms. The investigation of heretical movements requires specialized knowledge that combines theological expertise with practical understanding of how chaos corruption manifests in isolated populations. The Inquisition maintains liaison officers who work with major rogue trader dynasties to provide guidance on the detection and elimination of heretical influences, though these relationships are often complicated by the Inquisition's suspicion of dynasty activities that may themselves border on heretical. House Crin's relationship with Inquisitor Vex Corvanis has proven mutually beneficial, with the dynasty providing the Inquisitor with intelligence about chaos activities in frontier regions, while receiving guidance on maintaining spiritual purity during extended operations beyond imperial borders. Orc WAAGs represent perhaps the most unpredictable military threat facing rogue trader operations in unexplored regions, as these massive migrations of greenskin warriors can appear without warning and devastate entire star systems before Imperial authorities can mount effective resistance. The tribal nature of Orc society means that WAAGs can emerge from seemingly pacified regions when charismatic warbosses succeed in uniting previously fractured clans under their leadership. House Corda's mining operations in the Cornice Expanse have been disrupted by 3 separate WAAGs over the past century, each one requiring the deployment of substantial military forces and the temporary abandonment of valuable resource extraction sites. The early warning systems developed by experienced dynasties focus on detecting the social and technological changes that precede major Orc mobilizations. The appearance of more sophisticated weaponry among Orc tribes, increased coordination between previously independent clans, and the construction of larger spacecraft all indicate the possible emergence of a WAAG that could threaten regional stability. House Winterscale maintains intelligence networks that monitor Orc activities across multiple sectors, their agents providing advance warning that allows the dynasty to relocate valuable assets and prepare defensive positions before Orc forces can threaten critical installations. The military tactics required to combat Orc WAAGs differ significantly from conventional Imperial doctrine, as greenskin forces exhibit unpredictable behavioral patterns and technological capabilities that can vary dramatically between different tribal groups. Orc mechboys can produce weapons and vehicles that exceed Imperial capabilities through their species' inherent psychic field, creating equipment whose operation principles defy rational analysis. The defense of House Quintanis mining facilities against Warboss Scarfang's WAAG required the deployment of specialized anti-Orc weaponry, including sonic disruptors that could interfere with the psychic fields that enable Orc technology and flame weapons specifically designed to counter the Greenskins' remarkable regenerative abilities. Tyranid splinter fleets represent an existential threat to rogue trader operations, as these biomechanical swarms can consume entire star systems while adapting their tactics and organisms to counter whatever resistance they encounter. The hive mind's ability to learn from each engagement means that conventional defensive strategies become less effective over time, forcing rogue trader dynasties to develop innovative approaches to combat that can stay ahead of Tyranid adaptation. House Draconis encountered a minor splinter fleet during their exploration of the Eastern Fringe, the engagement requiring the complete evacuation of 3 colonial settlements and the deployment of experimental weapons whose effectiveness could not be guaranteed. The biological weapons employed by Tyranid organisms create unique challenges for medical personnel and defensive planners who must account for toxins, parasites, and viral agents that can spread through ship populations with devastating efficiency. The standard medical protocols developed for conventional warfare prove inadequate against Tyranid bioweapons, which can adapt to countermeasures and evolve new forms of lethality during the course of a single engagement. House Corda maintains specialized medical facilities equipped with experimental treatments and containment systems designed specifically for Tyranid biological agents, their development requiring collaboration with Mechanicus biologis specialists, whose expertise in xenobiology exceeds standard Imperial medical training. The psychological impact of Tyranid encounters extends beyond simple combat stress into areas of existential horror that can permanently damage the mental stability of survivors. The hive mind's alien intelligence creates a sense of cosmic insignificance that challenges fundamental human assumptions about individual worth and the meaning of existence. The crew members who survived House Draconis' encounter with the Splinter Fleet required extensive psychological rehabilitation, their treatment including memory modification techniques designed to reduce the traumatic impact of exposure to the hive mind's alien consciousness. The threat of mutiny represents a constant concern for rogue trader operations, as the isolation and stress of extended expeditions beyond Imperial borders can create conditions that favor rebellion among crew members whose loyalty may be tested by the hardships and dangers they encounter. The vast wealth controlled by Rogue Trader Dynasties creates obvious targets for ambitious subordinates who may view their commanders' resources as opportunities for personal enrichment. The hierarchical nature of dynasty operations means that successful mutinies can result in the complete collapse of carefully built commercial networks and the loss of assets that represent centuries of accumulated wealth. The mutiny that nearly destroyed House Corvanis during their exploration of the Halo stars demonstrates the devastating potential of internal rebellion within Rogue Trader expeditions. The uprising began among the dynasty's military forces, whose commander had grown increasingly resentful of what he perceived as inadequate compensation for the risks his troops faced during dangerous planetary surveys. The rebellion spread rapidly through the expedition hierarchy, with junior officers and technical specialists joining the mutineers in hopes of claiming shares of the dynasty's accumulated wealth. The conflict lasted for 3 months and resulted in the destruction of 2 vessels and the loss of over 60% of the expedition's personnel. The prevention of mutiny requires sophisticated understanding of crew psychology and the implementation of management techniques that can maintain loyalty and morale during extended periods of isolation and danger. Successful dynasties employ psychological specialists who monitor crew behavior for signs of growing discontent and implement interventions designed to address problems before they can escalate into open rebellion. House Winterscale maintains detailed psychological profiles of all senior personnel, their analysis allowing dynasty leadership to identify individuals whose loyalty may be wavering and implement targeted interventions to address their concerns. The rivalry between competing Rogue Trader dynasties can escalate into actual warfare when commercial disputes cannot be resolved through negotiation or legal proceedings. These conflicts often involve not only the immediate parties, but also their various allies and commercial partners, creating regional instabilities that can affect entire sectors. The commercial war between House Corda and House fell over mining rights in the Coronus Expanse, involved the deployment of private military forces equivalent to Imperial Guard battle groups, their engagements resulting in the destruction of several mining installations and the temporary disruption of trade routes that affected dozens of other commercial operations. The legal frameworks that govern inter-dynasty conflicts create complex situations where traditional imperial law may be inadequate to address disputes that occur beyond established imperial borders. The resolution of these conflicts often requires the intervention of neutral parties whose authority is recognized by all involved dynasties, creating opportunities for political manipulation and the formation of alliance networks that can influence regional power balances. House Quintanus has successfully mediated several inter-dynasty disputes, their reputation for fairness and their extensive political connections making them valuable arbitrators whose decisions are generally accepted by competing parties. The threat of betrayal by trusted advisors and family members represents perhaps the most devastating form of internal treachery that can affect Rogue Trader dynasties. The concentration of authority within bloodline hierarchies creates opportunities for ambitious relatives to eliminate their rivals and claim dynasty leadership through violence or political manipulation. The assassination of Lord Captain Haderach Winterscale by his own nephew demonstrates the lengths to which family members may go in pursuit of dynasty control, the murder requiring a complete restructuring of House Winterscale's succession protocols and the implementation of enhanced security measures designed to prevent similar betrayals. The investigation of internal betrayal requires specialized expertise that combines traditional investigative techniques with understanding of dynasty politics and the complex relationships that govern bloodline hierarchies. The most dangerous betrayals are those that involve multiple conspirators working in coordination to eliminate dynasty leadership while positioning themselves to claim control of the house's assets and authority. House Corda employs specialized investigators whose expertise in dynasty politics allows them to identify potential conspiracies before they can be implemented, their analysis focusing on the subtle changes in behavior and alliance patterns that may indicate developing plots against dynasty leadership. The security measures implemented by major dynasties to protect against internal threats often involve the creation of parallel authority structures that can maintain operational continuity even if primary leadership is compromised. These systems include sealed succession protocols that can only be activated under specific circumstances, secure communication networks that allow trusted advisors to coordinate responses to internal threats, and hidden asset reserves that can provide resources for dynasty restoration if primary holdings are compromised. The effectiveness of these measures depends largely on their secrecy and the absolute loyalty of the personnel responsible for their implementation. The Ordo Xenos maintains specialized cells dedicated exclusively to monitoring rogue trader activities, their agents embedded within commercial networks that span entire sectors. These investigators possess detailed knowledge of dynasty operations that often exceeds what the houses themselves maintain in their official records. Inquisitor Valerius Korath has spent the past 30 years cataloging every Xenos contact made by the major dynasties operating in the Koronus Expanse. His data vaults containing evidence of transactions that technically violate Imperial doctrine but remain within the ambiguous boundaries of warrant authority. The Inquisitor's files include detailed analyses of alien artifacts recovered by House Winterscale, transcripts of negotiations between House Quarter representatives and Tau Water caste diplomats, and surveillance reports documenting the movement of Xenos technologies through dynasty-controlled trade networks. The sophisticated surveillance networks employed by Ordo Xenos investigators incorporate both human agents and advanced monitoring technologies that can track dynasty activities across multiple star systems. These networks often include former dynasty employees whose loyalty has been purchased through a combination of financial incentives and threats of prosecution for their previous involvement in questionable activities. Marcus Severus, the former seneschal to House Corvanis, now provides the Ordo Xenos with detailed intelligence about dynasty operational procedures and the methods used to conceal illegal Xenos contact from Imperial authorities. His intimate knowledge of dynasty politics and commercial practices has proven invaluable for investigators seeking to understand the complex relationships that govern rogue trader operations. The evidence-gathering techniques used by Inquisition investigators must account for the sophisticated counterintelligence capabilities maintained by major dynasties, whose security apparatus often rivals that of planetary governments. House Kryn employs former Imperial Guard intelligence specialists whose expertise in operational security makes conventional surveillance extremely difficult. The dynasty's communications are encrypted using algorithms that incorporate both Imperial cryptographic techniques and alien mathematical principles recovered from Xenos sources, creating cipher systems that can resist analysis by standard Imperial code-breaking methods. Inquisitor Korath's investigation of House Kryn required the deployment of specialized cogitator systems whose processing capabilities exceed those available to most Imperial institutions. The legal complexities surrounding warrant authority create significant challenges for Inquisition investigators seeking to build cases against dynasties whose activities may violate Imperial law while remaining technically within their granted privileges. The ancient precedents established during the Great Crusade recognize that exploration beyond Imperial borders may require contact with alien civilizations, yet these precedents also emphasize that such contact must serve Imperial interests rather than personal enrichment. The interpretation of these principles requires sophisticated understanding of both Imperial law and the political factors that influence how such laws are enforced in practice. House Quintanus faced intensive Ordo Xenos scrutiny following their acquisition of a functioning Tau Crisis battlesuit through intermediary traders operating in neutral territory. The investigation required 18 months of detailed analysis to determine whether the transaction violated Imperial prohibitions against Xenos technology acquisition or fell within the Dynasty's warrant authority to acquire alien artifacts for Imperial benefit. The case ultimately hinged on the Dynasty's ability to demonstrate that the battlesuit was being reverse-engineered by Mechanica specialists for the development of improved Imperial armor systems, transforming what appeared to be illegal Xenos collaboration into sanctioned technology recovery operations. The threat of warrant revocation represents the ultimate sanction available to Imperial authorities dealing with dynasties whose activities cross the boundaries of acceptable behavior. This extreme measure requires approval from the highest levels of Imperial government and typically involves not only the cancellation of dynasty privileges, but also the confiscation of assets and the execution of family members deemed complicit in heretical activities. The revocation proceedings against House Corvanis during the 40th millennium demonstrate the devastating consequences that await dynasties whose Xenos contact programs lack adequate justification or political protection. The investigation that led to House Corvanis' downfall began with routine surveillance of their trading operations in the Eastern Fringe, where Ordo Xenos agents had detected unusual patterns in cargo manifests and crew rotations that suggested possible Xenos contact. The initial evidence appeared relatively minor, consisting primarily of discrepancies in shipping records and the presence of unidentified technological components aboard Dynasty vessels. However, the investigation expanded dramatically when captured pirates revealed that House Corvanis had been purchasing alien weapons and providing them to human raiders operating against Imperial shipping lanes. The political implications of warrant revocation extend far beyond the immediate consequences for the targeted dynasty, as such actions can destabilize entire regional economies and disrupt commercial networks that support multiple Imperial institutions. House Corvanis controlled trade routes that provided essential supplies to 17 different Imperial worlds, their operations generating tax revenues that supported local governmental functions and military forces. The dynasty's destruction created economic disruptions that required intervention by the administratum and the deployment of Imperial Navy forces to maintain order in regions where commercial collapse had created opportunities for pirate activity and rebellion. The delicate balance between cooperation and independence that characterizes successful dynasty Inquisition relationships requires constant negotiation and mutual accommodation that can be disrupted by changes in personnel or political priorities. House Winterscale has maintained positive relationships with Ordo Xenos investigators for over 2 centuries, their cooperation providing valuable intelligence about Xenos activities in exchange for protection from investigations that might otherwise have focused on their extensive alien contacts. This arrangement has proven mutually beneficial, with the dynasty's commercial networks providing the Inquisition with early warning of alien threats, while their political connections offer protection from hostile investigations. The intelligence sharing agreements that govern these cooperative relationships typically involve the dynasty providing detailed reports about Xeno civilizations encountered during their expeditions, including assessments of alien military capabilities, technological developments, and strategic intentions that may affect Imperial security. House Draconis maintains specialized intelligence analysis departments whose reports about Tau expansion efforts have proven crucial for Imperial military planning in the Damocles Gulf region. The dynasty's willingness to share this information has earned them protection from Ordo Xenos investigations that might otherwise have focused on their questionable commercial practices. The operational security measures employed by dynasties seeking to maintain their independence while avoiding Inquisition scrutiny often involve the creation of multiple layers of legal protection and plausible deniability that can obscure the true nature of their activities. House Corda structures their Xenos contact operations through a network of subsidiary companies and intermediary organizations that provide legal separation between the dynasty leadership and potentially heretical activities. This approach allows the house to maintain commercial relationships with alien species while ensuring that direct evidence of such contact cannot be easily traced to the warrant holders themselves. The compartmentalization of sensitive operations requires sophisticated organizational structures that can maintain operational effectiveness while limiting the exposure of dynasty leadership to criminal liability. The most successful approaches involve the creation of independent cells that operate with minimal knowledge of the broader organizational structure, their activities coordinated through intermediaries who possess only limited information about the ultimate sources of their instructions. House Kryn's Xenos contact operations are managed through 17 different subsidiary organizations, each one operating independently and maintaining separate financial and operational records that obscure their connections to the dynasty's primary leadership. The counterintelligence capabilities developed by major dynasties often incorporate techniques and technologies that exceed those available to standard imperial institutions, their effectiveness derived from the vast resources and specialized expertise that successful houses can accumulate over centuries of operations. House Winterscale employs former Inquisition acolytes whose knowledge of investigative techniques allows them to identify and neutralize surveillance operations before they can gather compromising evidence. The Dynasty's security apparatus includes psychic specialists whose abilities can detect telepathic surveillance and technical experts who can identify and disable electronic monitoring devices that might be planted by hostile investigators. The psychological profiles maintained by Inquisition investigators focus on identifying the personality traits and behavioral patterns that indicate susceptibility to corruption or heretical influence among Dynasty personnel. These assessments examine factors including religious devotion, loyalty to Imperial doctrine, resistance to alien influence, and the psychological stability necessary to maintain proper judgment during extended exposure to Xenos civilizations. The most dangerous individuals are those who demonstrate intellectual curiosity about alien cultures combined with flexibility in their interpretation of Imperial doctrine, characteristics that may indicate potential for gradual corruption through prolonged Xenos contact. Inquisitor Korath's analysis of House Korda personnel identified 17 individuals whose psychological profiles suggested increased risk of corruption through alien influence. Their assessment based on factors including their educational backgrounds, previous exposure to Xenos artifacts, and their responses to standardized loyalty testing procedures. The Inquisitor's recommendations led to the reassignment of these individuals to positions where their access to sensitive information was limited, though the Dynasty's compliance with these suggestions was voluntary rather than mandatory given their warrant authority. The doctrinal education programs implemented by dynasties seeking to maintain good relationships with Inquisition investigators often involve extensive training in Imperial theology and the proper interpretation of religious doctrine as it applies to frontier operations. These programs emphasize the distinction between acceptable Xenos contact that serves Imperial interests and heretical collaboration that benefits alien species at Imperial expense. House Quintanis maintains a staff of confessor militants whose responsibilities include providing regular spiritual guidance to Dynasty personnel and conducting loyalty assessments that can identify individuals whose faith may be wavering under the stresses of frontier operations. The ritual purification procedures required after significant Xenos contact involve complex ceremonies that combine elements of Imperial religious doctrine with practical measures designed to detect and eliminate alien influence. These rituals typically include extensive interrogation under truth-inducing drugs, psychic examination by sanctioned psychers trained to detect alien mental influences, and physical cleansing procedures that can remove biological or technological contaminants that may have been acquired during alien contact. The most thorough purification procedures can require weeks to complete and may result in permanent psychological changes that affect the individual's ability to function in their previous role. The documentation requirements that govern Dynasty operations in regions where Xenos contact is likely involve the maintenance of detailed records that can demonstrate the Imperial benefits derived from alien interactions, while providing evidence of proper precautions against corruption. These records must include comprehensive assessments of alien technologies acquired through trade, detailed analyses of intelligence gathered about Xenos' military capabilities, and thorough documentation of the security measures employed to prevent unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information. House Winterscale maintains archives that occupy entire deck sections of their flagship, their records providing complete documentation of every alien contact made by the Dynasty over the past 3 centuries. The political protection that successful dynasties cultivate through their relationships with senior Imperial officials often proves more valuable than legal compliance in protecting against Inquisition investigations. These relationships provide early warning of developing investigations, political support during formal proceedings, and the influence necessary to ensure that any punitive measures remain within acceptable bounds. House Draconis has invested enormous resources in cultivating relationships with sector lords, Imperial Navy commanders, and senior administratum officials, whose support has proven crucial during several Inquisition investigations that might otherwise have resulted in serious consequences for the Dynasty. The historical precedents established by previous warrant revocations create legal frameworks that influence how contemporary investigations are conducted and what standards of evidence are required to support extreme sanctions against Dynasty operations. The case of House Corvanis established that mere possession of Xenos artifacts is insufficient grounds for warrant revocation if the Dynasty can demonstrate that such materials were acquired for legitimate Imperial purposes. However, the same precedent also established that active collaboration with alien species against Imperial interests constitutes grounds for immediate revocation regardless of any claimed benefits to the Imperium. The survival strategies employed by dynasties facing serious Inquisition investigations often involve the strategic sacrifice of subsidiary operations or junior personnel to protect the core leadership and essential assets. House Fel successfully weathered an Ordo Xenos investigation by providing evidence of heretical activities among their commercial partners while demonstrating their own cooperation with Imperial authorities. This approach allowed the Dynasty to maintain their warrant while eliminating competitors whose activities had created unwanted attention from Inquisition investigators. The long-term consequences of intensive Inquisition scrutiny extend beyond immediate legal threats into areas of commercial disruption and political isolation that can permanently damage Dynasty operations. The investigation of House Corda's Xenos contact operations resulted in the cancellation of several major trade agreements and the loss of political relationships that had taken decades to establish. The Dynasty's recovery required substantial investments in new commercial partnerships and political connections, resources that might otherwise have been used for expansion into new markets or the acquisition of advanced technologies. The evolution of Inquisition investigative techniques reflects the ongoing arms race between Dynasty counterintelligence capabilities and the methods used by Imperial authorities to monitor potentially heretical activities. The development of new surveillance technologies, interrogation procedures, and analytical techniques requires constant adaptation by dynasties seeking to maintain their operational independence while avoiding the attention of hostile investigators. The most successful houses are those that anticipate these developments and implement countermeasures before new investigative techniques can compromise their operations. The return of Robute Guilliman and the dawn of the era Indomitus has fundamentally altered the operational landscape for Rogue Trader Dynasties across the galaxy. The Primarch's resurrection and his assumption of the role of Lord Commander of the Imperium brought sweeping administrative reforms that have touched every aspect of Imperial governance, including the ancient privileges and responsibilities of warrant holders. The Ultima founding created new Space Marine chapters, specifically designed to reinforce the Imperium's most threatened regions, while the Indomitus Crusade launched massive military campaigns to reclaim worlds lost during the time of ending. These developments have created both unprecedented opportunities and significant challenges for dynasties whose operations span the galaxy's most dangerous frontiers. The Great Rift's emergence has severed traditional trade routes that dynasties had maintained for millennia, forcing rapid adaptation to new navigational realities that have fundamentally altered the economics of interstellar commerce. The massive warp storm now divides the galaxy into Imperium Sanctus and Imperium Nihilus, creating barriers that even the most experienced navigators struggle to traverse safely. House Winterscale lost contact with 17 trading posts on the dark side of the rift, their commercial networks suddenly cut off from the primary supply lines that had sustained them for over 3,000 years. The dynasty's response involved the complete restructuring of their operational priorities, with resources redirected toward establishing new trade routes within Imperium Sanctus, while maintaining skeleton crews at installations that might still be accessible through dangerous warp passages. The instability of warp travel in the post-Rift galaxy has created new opportunities for dynasties willing to accept the increased risks associated with navigating the chaotic currents that now characterize much of the galaxy. The traditional monopolies held by established navigator houses have been disrupted by the emergence of previously unknown warp routes that require innovative navigation techniques. House Corda discovered 3 new passages through the Rift's periphery, their exploration vessels equipped with experimental navigation equipment that combines traditional Imperial technology with carefully adapted alien innovations. These routes provide access to markets that have been isolated since the Rift's formation, creating opportunities for enormous profits for those brave enough to attempt the dangerous journeys. The Necron Awakening has introduced threats that require completely new approaches to military planning and risk assessment. The ancient Xenos species possesses technologies that can neutralize conventional Imperial defenses with terrifying efficiency, their tomb worlds awakening throughout regions that Rogue Trader Dynasties had previously considered secure. House Quintanis encountered a fully awakened Necron tomb complex during their exploration of the Ghoul Stars, the engagement resulting in the complete loss of 2 exploration vessels and forcing the dynasty to abandon mining operations worth billions of thrones. The Necron forces demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the dynasty's previous experience, including weapons that could phase matter out of existence and defensive systems that could regenerate faster than Imperial weapons could damage them. The technological superiority of awakened Necron forces has forced dynasties to invest heavily in new defensive systems and tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter these ancient threats. The energy weapons employed by Necron warriors can penetrate void shields and adamantine armor with equal efficiency, while their resurrection protocols allow destroyed units to return to combat within minutes of their apparent destruction. House Kryn has developed specialized anti-Necron weaponry that incorporates principles derived from their analysis of captured Xenos technology, though the effectiveness of these weapons remains limited against the most advanced Necron constructs. The intelligence gathering requirements for operations in Necron-contested regions exceed anything previously encountered by Dynasty security services. The ancient Xenos species operates according to strategic principles that span millennia, their plans unfolding across timescales that dwarf human comprehension. House Draconis maintains specialized analysis teams whose sole responsibility involves monitoring Necron activity patterns and attempting to predict their strategic objectives. These efforts have identified several tomb worlds whose awakening cycles suggest coordinated activation sequences, though the ultimate purpose of these patterns remains unclear. The expanding Tyranid presence throughout the galaxy has created new categories of threat that require fundamental changes to Dynasty operational procedures. The hive fleets that emerged from the intergalactic void possess adaptive capabilities that allow them to counter human tactics and technologies with frightening speed. House Winterscale's encounter with elements of Hive Fleet Chronos resulted in the complete biological contamination of their mining facility on Xerion Prime, forcing the Dynasty to implement orbital bombardment protocols that destroyed installations worth hundreds of millions of thrones. The Tyranid organisms demonstrated the ability to adapt to Imperial weapons during the course of the engagement, with later waves of attackers showing resistance to weapons that had proven effective against earlier assault waves. The biological weapons deployed by Tyranid organisms create unique challenges for medical personnel and defensive planners who must account for threats that can evolve during combat. The standard medical protocols developed for conventional warfare prove inadequate against Tyranid bioweapons, which can adapt to countermeasures and develop new forms of lethality within hours of their initial deployment. House Corda has invested enormous resources in developing specialized medical facilities, equipped with experimental treatments and containment systems designed specifically for Tyranid biological agents. Their research conducted in cooperation with Mechanicus Biologus specialists, whose expertise in xenobiology exceeds standard Imperial medical training. The psychological impact of Tyranid encounters extends beyond simple combat stress into areas of existential horror that can permanently damage the mental stability of survivors. The hive mind's alien intelligence creates a sense of cosmic insignificance that challenges fundamental human assumptions about individual worth and the meaning of existence. Dynasty medical personnel have developed specialized treatment protocols for crew members who survive Tyranid encounters, their procedures including memory modification techniques designed to reduce the traumatic impact of exposure to the hive mind's alien consciousness. The Primaris Space Marines created through Guilliman's initiatives have established new relationships with Rogue Trader Dynasties that reflect the changing strategic priorities of the era Indomitus. These enhanced warriors possess capabilities that exceed those of their predecessors, their advanced equipment and training making them valuable allies for Dynasty operations in the galaxy's most dangerous regions. House Quintanus has developed cooperative arrangements with the Primaris chapter known as the Void Stalkers, their partnership providing the Dynasty with access to advanced military capabilities in exchange for logistical support and intelligence about Xenos activities in frontier regions. The new Space Marine chapters created during the Ultima founding often lack the established traditions and territorial claims that characterize older chapters, creating opportunities for dynasties to establish relationships that would have been impossible with more traditional Astartes forces. The Rift Wardens chapter has worked closely with House Draconis to establish supply lines that can support their operations on the dark side of the Great Rift, their cooperation providing the Dynasty with protection against Chaos Raiders, while offering the chapter access to resources and intelligence that would otherwise be unavailable. The administrative reforms implemented by Guilliman have created new bureaucratic structures that affect Dynasty operations in ways that are still being evaluated by House leadership. The Logos Historica Verita and other new institutions possess mandates that can overlap with traditional rogue trader privileges, creating potential conflicts over jurisdiction and authority. House Winterscale has invested substantial resources in establishing relationships with key figures in these new organizations, their diplomatic efforts designed to ensure that administrative changes do not compromise their operational independence. The torchbearer fleets that carried Primaris reinforcements throughout the galaxy have established new supply networks that dynasties can potentially access for their own operations. These military logistics chains provide access to advanced equipment and specialized personnel that can enhance dynasty capabilities, though gaining access to these resources requires careful negotiation with Imperial authorities whose priorities may not align with commercial interests. House Corda has successfully negotiated agreements that provide them with access to Primaris equipment in exchange for their services in establishing forward supply bases in contested regions. The strategic importance of rogue trader dynasties has increased dramatically in the post-Rift galaxy, where traditional imperial institutions struggle to maintain operations across the vast distances and dangerous conditions that now characterize much of the Imperium. The flexibility and independence that have always characterized dynasty operations make them uniquely suited to the challenges of the era Indomitus, where rapid adaptation and innovative solutions are essential for survival. Guilliman himself has recognized this reality, issuing new directives that expand warrant authority in specific areas while maintaining the oversight necessary to prevent abuse of these enhanced privileges. The economic disruptions caused by the Great Rift have created new markets and opportunities that dynasties are uniquely positioned to exploit. The isolation of entire sectors has created demand for goods and services that can only be provided by organizations capable of operating independently of traditional imperial supply chains. House Kryn has established new trading networks that provide essential supplies to imperial worlds cut off from their traditional sources, their operations generating enormous profits while serving crucial strategic functions for the broader Imperium. The technological innovations developed in response to the challenges of the era Indomitus have enhanced dynasty capabilities in ways that provide significant advantages over less adaptable organizations. The new warp drives and navigation systems developed by Mechanicus specialists working with dynasty tech adepts can traverse the unstable currents created by the Great Rift with greater safety than traditional imperial designs. House Winterscale has invested heavily in acquiring these advanced systems. Their upgraded vessels capable of maintaining trade routes that remain inaccessible to competitors using older technology. The intelligence networks maintained by major dynasties have proven invaluable for imperial authorities seeking to understand and respond to the new threats that characterize the 42nd millennium. The commercial contacts and exploration activities that dynasties maintain throughout the galaxy provide early warning of Necron awakenings, Tyranid incursions, and chaos activities that might otherwise go undetected until they pose immediate threats to imperial worlds. House Draconis has formalized their intelligence sharing arrangements with several imperial institutions, their cooperation providing them with political protection while serving essential strategic functions. The colonial ventures undertaken by dynasties in the era Indomitus often serve dual purposes, establishing commercial operations while providing strategic depth for imperial defenses against the new threats that emerge from the galaxy's dark corners. The fortress trading posts established by House Corda in the Cornus Expanse serve as early warning stations that can detect approaching Tyranid scout organisms while maintaining the commercial functions that justify their existence. These installations represent a new model for dynasty operations that combines traditional commercial activities with strategic military functions. The survival of rogue trader dynasties through the challenges of the era Indomitus demonstrates their continued relevance to the Imperium's strategic needs. The flexibility, resources, and independence that characterize these ancient institutions make them uniquely suited to the complex challenges of the 42nd millennium, where traditional approaches often prove inadequate to address the diverse threats that face humanity. The Warrant of Trade remains one of the Imperium's most valuable assets, its bearers serving as the cutting edge of human expansion and the guardians of commercial networks that bind the galaxy together, despite the forces that seek to tear it apart. As the era Indomitus continues to unfold, the rogue trader dynasties stand as testament to the enduring vision of the Emperor's grand design for humanity's galactic dominion. Their ancient warrants, blessed with the authority of the throne itself, continue to open new frontiers and possibilities for the Imperium's expansion. In an age where the galaxy burns with war and the very fabric of reality tears asunder, these merchant princes and explorer nobles remain humanity's boldest pioneers, carrying the Emperor's light into the darkest corners of the void and ensuring that the Imperium's reach extends far beyond the borders of its established worlds. The blood, honor, and ancient privilege that define their dynasties continue to serve the greater glory of the Imperium, their ships sailing the dangerous currents of the warp to secure humanity's future among the stars.